All right, it is 7:30. So we can go ahead and commence this virtual meeting of the Albany, California Social and Economic Justice Commission. Before we move into our agenda and our roll call, we'll take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are all gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been Huichin and surrounding areas, including ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone and Bay Miwok, people recognized in the Verona Band of Alameda County, whose descendants now include members of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people, and they have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. Thank you for your attendance at this regular September meeting of the Social and Economic Justice Commission. I think our first order of business is the roll call. Shall I do it, or would you rather Sid or Isabel do it?
I could do that for you, Commissioner Downs. Commissioner Berry?
Present.
Commissioner Grossman?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerr?
Present.
Commissioner Marks? She is indicating yes with the thumbs up. Thank you. Chair Downs?
Present. All right, we're all accounted for in here. Thank you for your help, Sid. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from our August 20th special meeting. The minutes, as well as other relevant documents, are included as hyperlinks on our agenda on the Albany, which is on the Albany Social and Economic Justice Commission website under Albany, California. And so the minutes, as well as public comments and other summaries, are included as hyperlinks there. So do we have, has anyone been able to review our minutes from our special meeting of August 20th? And do we have any discussion or suggestions for revision? Okay. If not, whenever anyone is moved to make a motion, I'll be glad to entertain a motion. Commissioner Marks. I think you're muted, Margie. Oh, I can feel like I can read your lips, but it would be better for all if we could hear you, Margie. We still can't hear you.
I move that we.
Thank you.
All right.
I second.
All right, now we've got you, Margie. I heard that.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead to our vote. I'll call on people in the order in which they're on my screen. Commissioner Grossman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
And I've also vote yes. So the minutes of the August 20th meeting are approved. Thank you to Sid and Isabel for keeping the minutes moving. Now we come to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. We also do have public comments that were received prior to 5 p.m. On a written form that are included as a hyperlink in the text of our agenda. The public comment section here is for addressing the commission on items that are not on the agenda below, as you'll see, which includes a number of items under agenda item 6 so we'll have public discussion and comment on each of those items on 6.1 through 6.6. But for public comment now, indicate you'd like to be called in if you've got comment on an item that's not on the agenda. Again, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits commission ability to discuss or move on items that are not on the agenda. But we can receive general public comments now for items that are not on the agenda. I see a couple of hands up, and I think the city clerk is moving in Jeremiah Penguelo, and you are on.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. A couple issues. First, I want to raise awareness about the showers. Jim Beller's really pushing the shower program to be reopened, waiting on Alameda County's okay. Berkeley Food and Housing, I know they got showers. I saw something down on Cedar and 3rd in Berkeley. It's like a shower trailer. But you guys did nothing to keep the Albany shower program alive during this whole pandemic. You guys freaked out and nobody wanted to do it. You got scared and you just said, let Berkeley Food and Housing deal with it. And everybody could go to Willard and take showers at a homeless school. So, I'm really pushing for, showers to be reopened. Maybe you could push for the YMCA to get another emergency trailer. Possibly, I don't know. I suggested that I could pay $1,000 for that temporary portable heated shower. I sent you the link, allsafety.com or something, but I never got an okay for that. Here it is 6 months later, still I haven't showered since March. There's still no shower in Albany. I think Berkeley Food and Housing's taking advantage of Albany. They're taking all our money and they're not even helping our own citizens. Another thing also is that social and economic justice it's kind of, the city council members are up for a 4-year term. And like I say, that's too long. What if we get the wrong person in there? Now we're stuck with somebody for 4 years, and it doesn't leave opportunity for someone new to lead or anything. So eventually it'd be nice to bring that back down to 2 years if we could. It's not justice or socially having somebody just hog it all the time on the same committee. Also, for Social and Economic Justice Committee, a point of interest is that these city councils, even the Social and Economic Justice Committee, you have all these subcommittees that are supposed to do stuff within the community, but you keep hogging the leadership. You keep taking upon yourself to be the leaders of these subcommittees and leaders of the subcommittees. You look at Berkeley, city of Berkeley, they've got all these subcommittees with different people on it, members of the community, but you guys are hogging all the leadership roles. So please stop hogging all the leadership roles and let the citizens of Albany have an opportunity to show some leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I think the city clerk will be moving in the next speaker, who's Brian Beal, and I believe you're on.
Hi, everybody. How's the sound?
It has come back. You came on for a second and faded, and now you're back.
Okay. I was just checking. I was quiet. Let's say my internet connection is unstable or anything. Anyway, hi. How is everyone? I just wanted to say I really appreciate all your work. I really wish we could get a shower for Jeremy too. This is one of the big issues, homelessness, and people just not having what they need. Anyway, I wanted to let you know, I'm going to be running for school board here in Albany. I'm hoping to help advance some of the causes of the social and economic justice while I'm at that, and to help out with some of the technology needs in the community. So I'm really looking forward to diving more deeply into some of these issues, and I'll talk to you later on tonight in some of the scheduled items. So And I really hope, again, that someday we could get the shower for Jeremy. He's been asking for it for a long time. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. I see one more hand, and the city clerk will move in. Apologies if I get the name wrong. Signe Matson, you're coming in now.
Thank you. I'm wanting to talk to you about the hate crime vandalism that's happened at the Giltrap Farm. I was hoping that Jackie had already spoken and read the statement about the events. So just recalling from memory, there were two white men in a red pickup that came and destroyed a sign that said indigenous land on the San Pablo fence. There was also a sign on the Marin side that talked about Black Lives Matter and related to the Black Earth Farm group. You know, we're a community coalition partnership with the university, and the Segoriate Land Trust is one of the organization's partners, as is the Black Earth Farm. And so we just want to publicize these events and to encourage city agencies to take an active role in what's to happen. I'm not speaking for the farm community, but as an individual member, I know we have a lot of discussion about restorative justice and not reacting in anger to the people that committed these crimes, but we would like to have conversation and to come to some mutual understanding with them. All segments of the society are in trouble right now, and the only way we're going to survive is if we can come together and respect each other and find ways to work together. So that's basically, and I would request that you put it on your next meeting's agenda. Hopefully you can put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and that's the hate crime vandalism that's been occurring at the Giltrap Farm. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I see Jackie Hermes Fletcher, and the city clerk is moving you in, and you should be on now.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to read the statement that we wrote as the Giltrap Farm Coalition. On Monday, August 24th, 2020, two unidentified white men in a red pickup truck with plates 71962V1 vandalized artwork created by the indigenous artist Inez and displayed at the UC Giltrap Community Farm. These men were observed cutting the artwork into pieces to remove it. In addition, they violently tore signage into small pieces and left this on the ground. Why is this news? The artwork depicted and communicated that this site is located on land of the Lisan Ohlone peoples who have lived in the territory of Risheen since the beginning of time, and that our farm is a community space. The destruction of this artwork is a hate crime. We at the farm strongly object to the damage done by these two men. For thousands of years, the Ohlone people have remained on the land now known as the East Bay in the San Francisco Bay Area. The Ohlone culture believes people do not own the land, we belong to it. Generation after generation, the residents of Lisan cultivated reciprocal relationships with the plants and animals shared with this place and have beautiful and powerful cultural practices to keep the natural area in balance. This is not a standalone incident. During the previous week, a Black Lives Matter banner created by Black Earth Farms, also displayed on the fence at the Gill Track, was defaced by unknown persons. The banner was restored by the farmers. Soon after that, the banner was stolen. Over a period of 3 weeks, artwork highlighting Black and Indigenous peoples was defaced at the Gill Track farm. These actions by vandals must be stopped. These are acts of aggression towards people of color, showing their presence in our community. We must make the act of violence visible to our community, as well as making it known that actions taken to destroy banners or artwork celebrating people of color in public spaces will not be tolerated. The UC Giltrap Community Farm, located in Albany at the corner of San Pablo and Marin Avenue, is a collaborative community project between UC Berkeley and the local community, focused on the issues of food justice and farming. The Giltrap Farm embraces the visions of Segura Te Land Trust and Black Earth Farms, and they are members of the Giltrap Farm Coalition. The Giltrap Farm is one of many community farms practicing urban agriculture and developing sustainable food systems worldwide. And they are local solutions to social constraints and environmental and economic justices. Due to the public health constraints by Alameda County, the Giltrap Farm is closed to the public until the COVID-19 danger passes. Essential worker volunteers are continuing to produce vegetables at the site, though, and are distributing these foods to pantries, shelters, and low-income families across the East Bay.
Jackie, can you wrap up, please?
Thank you so much. For more information, contact Giltrap Farm, Segura Te Land Trust, Black Earth Farms. Can I please put this item on your next agenda? I request that, please. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for your comment. I see one more member of the public waiting to come in, Julie Winkelstein, and I believe you are on.
Hi, I wasn't going to speak in this part of the meeting, but I just wanted to support Jackie and Sinye, or however you pronounce their name, in requesting that this be on the agenda. I know that I'm under the impression that it's under the purview of UC Berkeley, but I feel like the SEJC could have it on the agenda, have a discussion, and make some sort of public comment, or maybe even talk to UC Berkeley. Anyway, take some action, because it obviously is much needed. So I just wanted to support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes the agenda item number 3, our general public comment. Now we move into agenda item 4. We have both staff and commissioner announcements. Why don't we begin with staff announcements?
Thank you, Chair Downs. I do have one announcement. I wanted to update the commission that a complaint to review city election materials for an update to a neutral pronoun was received by the city and acknowledged. The documents are administrative documents created to help candidates seeking elective office navigate through the many requirements in the elections code for such office. The city clerk, who serves as the elections official per the city charter and municipal code and is appointed by the city council, is directly responsible for the administration of elections in accordance with the election code. She has been incredibly proactive and responsive and has already taken the initiative to update the guiding administrative documents in coordination with the city attorney. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Isabel. And Sid, do you have any updates? No. Okay, thank you. So updates from commissioners. Commissioner Kerr.
I just wanted to advise Social and Economic Justice Commission, as well as the community at large, that the Alameda County Behavioral Health Services Oversight Commission for mental health funding dollars has an opening for District 5. We are seated in District 5 in the city of Albany, and we are under Alameda County Commissioner, Keith Carson's district. There are 3 seats in District 5, and there is an open seat in District 5 for the Mental Health Commission. Given that we are going to be discussing this in our further agenda 6.6, I think it is appropriate for the public to know that if anyone in the public is interested in serving on this commission, which would be a voice for Albany as well as the county in general, they can contact the Mental Health Commission. The phone number for that is 510-567-8100 to apply for that open position on Alameda County Behavioral Health Oversight Commission. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Other commissioner announcements? Commissioner Marks.
Okay, I'm going to repeat something, I'm sorry, that has already been talked about, but I want to talk about the Gill Tract a little bit more. So the Gill Tract is one place in Albany where we honor our Ohlone heritage. The Gill Tract Farm, it's on Marin and San Pablo. It's right across the street from the City Hall. And it is a community that's a partnership between UC Berkeley, the Gill Tract Farms, Black Earth Farms, and they have invited the Segura Tay Land Trust to share the land and the food. This is particularly important. The Segura Tay Land Trust takes steps to acknowledge the history of genocide on this land and contribute to its healing, as well as keeping Ohlone customs alive. So it was there, an artist from Segura Tay is the one who wove a beautiful sign into the chain link fence on the San Pablo part of the farm that read Indigenous Land. So on August 7th, it was defaced, so it only read U.S. land. A group from the Diverse Housing Working Group repaired the sign, nowhere near as nice as it originally was, but it read Indigenous land. On August 17th, what appeared to be 2 white males in a red pickup destroyed the sign, so now it just reads U.S. In addition, there was a cardboard sign that read Indigenous land, give Shumai, was destroyed. Shumai means gift in native language. I read on Facebook that Black Lives Matter signs in Albany are getting tagged with spray paint painting over the black part. Our community cannot just give lip service to honoring this land and native ancestors. I'm really calling on all members of our community to stand against this hate and give Shumai to help restore these signs, which the Gill Tract Farm wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Other announcements? Okay, I have just a couple that involve updates on future agenda items. My understanding, and staff can correct me if I've misunderstood, is that the Albany Project Hope quarterly report review will be on the October agenda rather than September, as this sometimes happens because of the number of items on this agenda. So we should be reviewing their quarterly report in the next meeting, and also that on an item that had come up for future agenda items on the city's RV removal policy, that staff is gathering information on that. Recognizing both the special meeting nature of our August 20th meeting and also the generally quiet nature of August. So we will hope to have updates on those in future meetings. Any other announcements? All right. Thank you so much. So that concludes then item 4. Item 5 is presentations. I'm not aware of any. Are there any presentations? It appears no, so that concludes item 5. So item 6 is our largest collection of items. This is discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items. As you can see from the agenda, we have 6 different sub pieces of item 6, and we'll handle them separately and in the order that they are listed on the agenda. 6.1 is the Equity Impact Plan Subcommittee updates. So we will hear from here in this section, sorry for my slip of the tongue, from our 3 subcommittees, one on affordable housing, second on schools and youth, and the third on policing. And then we can have any general follow-up that we want on the subcommittees. So before we move into our subcommittee, I guess maybe does it make sense to do the updates and then ask for public comment and then to come back for discussion? Is that sensible? So that the public knows of what they're commenting on beyond the title. Okay, in that case, then let's start with the update from Affordable Housing and Economic Development Subcommittee. Would one of the commissioners be game to provide us with that? Commissioner Kerr?
Thank you. I'd like to invite our consultant, if we can, to share the screen with the public about the notes that we have from the work that we have done. I want to reflect on the fact that Commissioner Gary and I have participated in a substantial number of hours of work with the consultants and have a plan and have some documents that are on the agenda or attachment to the agenda. I'd like to be able to show those at this point in time. But if we can't, I'd be happy to go ahead and just discuss the primary. My area of focus has been on housing, and Commissioner Gary will address community development issues. These two are not separate; they are linked.
The notes are on the. Have been posted to the city website, so I will go get them and share my screen for you.
That'd be great if that could happen. I'm not sure who's can do that with most ease, but
I got you. We'll share the screen now. I was trying.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pull up the business housing first. Is that okay?
That's where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. So let me know if it's large enough, because my screen's a little different.
It's good for me. If anyone has any difficulty reading this, that would be great. So it wouldn't be great. It would be good if you could tell us that you couldn't see it. We would make it more visible for you. So just to remind everyone who is on the housing subcommittee, it's myself, Janelle Gary, Dr. Shelley Holt, and Nicole Anderson. And our purpose is really to just research and review housing and how that fits into a racial and equity framework within the city. The overarching goals that we have are not different than any other subcommittee that you're going to hear from tonight. Our action items are to identify focus areas, to identify equity challenges, and to identify additional stakeholders and partners to engage with, as well as data collection and metrics. These are areas where public comment tonight is most invited, and please, if you are engaged in this conversation, feel that your input is valuable and we want to hear from you. So our most recent meeting was this past week, and our meeting summary notes are that we have reviewed and reported out on August 20th. We provided an August 20 update. Since that time, we have reviewed further public comment, and we are continuing to work on the identifying equity challenges. Our initial commentary was somewhat limited in our last meeting. We had a special meeting, as you may recall, of the Social and Economic Justice Commission, and there was some commentary, but it was somewhat limited, and we were not able to add a lot of content or bullet points to our plan from public comment. So please, if you have comments on this, we want to invite those. This is your opportunity as a public to participate. The housing goals in review are our participation in the equity goal is to have people in the community that do small business or work in the area. We're talking about people with restaurants and employees on Solano and San Pablo who can't afford to live in the community. We want that to change. We want to have that to be a place where we have housing in the community that is affordable to all the members of our community who work and participate here. Our affordable housing San Pablo plan, our vision is that we will increase the density of Albany. This is our subcommittee's vision, so it's open for discussion by the larger commission as well as the public. But we really would like to see 4 stories or higher on San Pablo, and at least 5 buildings with affordable housing as a primary focus in that area. Our report here tonight is to invite public comment, and we're identifying housing and Solano plan specific information that we can really look at. We want to overlay this. So what we're really trying to do when we create our survey questions is we're going to overlay our primary goals for affordable housing with the experiences, the attitude, the knowledge, skills, behavior, practices, perception, and knowledge of the community at large with what we are trying to accomplish. And we, again, invite your commentary. So what do we know, what do we don't know about the survey? One of the key things we're looking at is household income percentages. That means if I live in a house, what percentage of my household income is devoted to my housing expense? Is my rent 80% of my household income? Is my mortgage 20%? Is my house shared with other people? Do I participate in social service support systems that help me pay the rent? For the community, we want to be able to define affordable housing, and we want to report on discriminatory housing practices. We know we have a history of discriminatory redlining and housing practices in the city, and we know that we have ongoing issues of discriminatory practices within our city. So we want to be able to really highlight that and talk about that in our survey to the community so that we are gathering further information on that. We want to identify specific metrics, and again, this repeats as you're going to hear more reports tonight, but the metrics and the mechanics of the reports are not good, or the survey's not going to differ. Thanks for scrolling, who's ever, Nicole, thank you for this. And we want to identify additional stakeholders. So clearly we're going to work with the city staff at the community development level, within the city at large, and we have some specific questions that we're working for. We should have some drafts of the survey available by our next meeting, possibly as in mid-September, is to be determined. We're going to have a collaborative meeting with the staff before we do that, and the dates for that are still being established. So that's my report.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Kerr. Am I right that the economic development / business community report is separate, but part of the same?
You are correct, and I think Commissioner
It
Kerr is. Yeah.
How about if we hear that before we move to further discussion, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's fine. Basically, like Judy said, we've been working hand in hand with together on trying to develop what we think would be the best plan for the city. So if you want to pull mine up. Let's make sure we have the same thing. Okay.
Thank you.
So the purpose of our group is to research focus areas around business community development to identify challenges and action steps to inform the recommendations of the SCJC to the City Council, contribute development of racial equity framework impact plan. Our overarching subcommittee outcomes would contribute to development of racial equity statement, collect and or review data to inform recommendations, actions, and develop anti-racism social justice survey. And so as Judy stated, we did meet last Friday, I believe, and we went over basically My report is going to look similar to Judy's because we worked again hand in hand. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about was the meeting actions that were in place. We started developing questions so we can identify who is responsible staff-wise for marketing businesses. How are we working to keep our businesses in place and to acquire new businesses? And then the data collection from the city staff on the amount of what the cost is to do business here in Albany, taxes and such. So as we're collecting the data to prepare for the survey, these are some of the things that we're going to be looking for. Again, our key stakeholders, we were able to identify those being, again, the city staff, recognizing who that's going to be. Alan Kane, he is with the Solano Association. Sean Charles is with, he's the president of the Chamber of Commerce, so we need to switch that. Sean is the president, not Alan. Jennifer Hampson is also a part of the Solano Business Association, and Todd Abbott, both as a part of the Chamber of Commerce and the Solano Avenue Association. So we'll update that to make sure that's correct. But these are the people that we're going to reach out to find out how our businesses are doing, especially during COVID. What are some of the needs? What are some of the challenges that they're experiencing now? And again, we want to make sure that we keep what we have. At some point, we want to make sure that we continue to build upon that. But we want, the ultimate goal is to have a multicultural business district where we're able to support everyone, right? We want to make sure that we're marketing to the right businesses, making sure that we're getting businesses. We talked about last week of possibly having a co-op program for students to come in and eventually acquire businesses of their own. So we're going to make sure that we continue to move forward and that this business district is vibrant along San Pablo and Solano. We're going to continue to discuss ways to, I guess, increase our visibility here in the city, to make sure it's open, make sure it's visible, and make sure it's friendly. And so basically that's where we're at this time.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner Gary. At this point, let's pause, and if we have questions for this subcommittee,
I'd like to just sort of, if I can, just have a brief 30-second summary of the report that we've done. What we're hoping to do is, with the housing element of the general plan, is really instill and freeze in place a very living and ongoing dedication to social equity within our plan. There has not been a placeholder for social equity, for racial justice, for social and economic justice within any of this work prior to this, and we are really hoping that this is an opportunity to create a pathway forward where we can actually have that as a living part of these documents. Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions of the subcommittee first, and then we can take public comment on this and follow up discussion from the commission on this. Commissioner Grossman.
There is a commission, and I can't remember the name of it, but there is a commission on development, isn't there? Isabel, wasn't there a committee set up by the council?
Is it an economic development?
Economic, yes. And are they also seen as a group to work with?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
As far as the business is concerned, yes, we'll update that as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move to public comment? Okay, thank you. So if members of the public want to be heard specifically on this subcommittee, we'll have the other subcommittees subsequently. Indicate by raising your hand. The city clerk can bring in Jeremiah Penguelo. And Jeremiah, you're on.
Thank you very much. So yeah, this RV thing, we're in this economic downturn, and I was money coming in. So that was my situation, but I didn't want to be homeless on the streets, right? So I had an RV to put a roof over my head. You guys want to remove RVs from the streets? Well, that's the most affordable housing there is. You guys are like, you're all talk, you know, you guys talk about this affordable housing and all these numbers, but you really don't make any RV. Sorry, my dad keeps the most affordable thing is an RV. And you got all these people that can't afford anything but an RV. So where's the economic social justice? You know, it's like you're discriminating against RVs. You know, here you go. What if you have African American family with kids? Now they're evicted next month because they can't make 25% of their payments or whatever. And now they're in an RV because it's the only affordable housing they can. You know, you're just going to kick them out because this RV thing is a municipal code. You know, we're not breaking any laws to put a roof over our head kind of thing. So I don't see what the big deal about this RVs is. It's like you're discriminating, you're judging against a certain class of society. And they're not homeless, right? Because you have a home, it's your RV. There was a Supreme Court case ruling that even RVs are a home, you know. And so this Solano Avenue Association thing with the survey, are you going to just email the survey to all the Solano Avenue Association members, or you know, like also, oh my gosh, also like the San Pablo Avenue businesses are left out of the loop because the San Pablo Avenue, they don't have an association. You know, they feel kind of left out. You're kind of discriminating against San Pablo Avenue businesses because you forgot about them. You only care about Solano Avenue Association. Well, what about San Pablo businesses? Where's their San Pablo Avenue Association? So forward agenda item, they need a voice. They need a San Pablo Avenue business and send that survey. You know, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Not seeing any more public comment on this. So actually, I see Julie Winklestein, the city clerk, can bring in. And Julie, you should be on.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I thought there'd be more people, so I waited. I just wanted to, I have a couple questions, actually, just to clarify. When it says for both of those presentations, identify additional stakeholders or partners to engage with, it says city staff. I think they both say city staff, and it doesn't seem to be engaging with anybody. I'm assuming that it won't just be city staff. It will also be, or people from the Solano Avenue Association or people from the Chamber of Commerce, but maybe small businesses, community members. I'm confused as to why this is staying so local or so small and limited, and not seeing a lot of outreach. And I don't really understand that. And then I just wanted to address the comment I think Judy made about there wasn't a lot of response at the last meeting, and that you really welcome responses from the public. But I don't know if you're aware of this, but the way that the meetings are being advertised right now, besides online, is that now they're being put in the kiosk at the top of Solano that's almost in Berkeley. And the size of the sign, the notice is a quarter sheet with a font size maybe 8. So if you don't happen to walk by that kiosk and see this little tiny piece of paper in there, you're not going to know about the meeting. So if Commissioner Kerr, if you would like to have more public input, I think there needs to be a much bigger effort to let the public know. And I noticed that there was another sign on the same kiosk that was much larger. It was about Albany in or Albany out or whatever, and it was very colorful and big. There was a pamphlet for getting police officers, but this information about these critical meetings that you're having is this little tiny piece of paper. And it's the same size of piece of paper at the community center. And I also walked down Solano and found other places where you could put kiosks going all the way down Solano, put big signs with lots of bright colors, and have a heading that says to our community, we need you. We need to hear your voices. We need you to come to these meetings. We can't do this work without you. And I'm just not seeing that at all. And I've been coming to meetings for a long time and saying the same thing. So I hope that there'll be an effort to reach out to the community, to the church, the faith community, to the PTA, to the school district, to the village, to everyone in all different ways to get them to come in and give you the information that you so desperately need and want. So anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so further discussion or actually I see one more hand up. Corey Dosty, the clerk, will bring in.
Hi, good evening. Sorry, I'm really tired today, but I did want to just add a question about if the senior center is going to be where that falls. I don't know if that's business or housing, but it feels like one of them. And I didn't see it on either. I might have missed it. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right. So further discussion by the commission of the subcommittee reports. Commissioner Gary.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make some clarifications to the public comment. One regarding San Pablo Avenue. We are looking at San Pablo and Solano. We're not separating those two. They are collective. So just want to let the public know that we're not just separating San Pablo and Solano. We're coming together, all the businesses. Another comment that was made about reaching out to the community. Yes, indeed. I speak on it. I'm telling you, we're reaching out to the community. We'll be talking to small businesses. The Solano Association has been out assessing what the businesses are been going through, trying to get information. We will be speaking with them and building upon the information they have so we can work together. So again, it's just not the city staff. It's just not the commission. We will be reaching out to the community and making sure that their voices are heard. It's definitely our small business because they're the ones that are being hurt right now because of COVID and various other things. The posting, I think we have that on the agenda to speak to about making sure that these meetings are being posted and legible. We do, Judy, I think she made the comment about it being small. We would like to see it bigger so people will know. I think the city has been taking the necessary steps to do that. But again, that's on our agenda. So we'll speak more to that later. I believe that's all I have to say about clarifying where we're at as far as the surveying and our agenda items.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gary. I think I see Commissioner Grossman.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Some of you may be aware that a bill passed recently called Senate Bill 1079, which was posted by Nancy Skinner. And what that bill does is protect single-family houses from being bought up in batches by private equity institutions and other financial institutions. And it gives individuals, residents in the community, the first opportunity when housing becomes available. This was inspired by the events in Oakland a while back when some mothers took over some housing that was slated to be part of a group of houses that would be sold to a large firm. The reason I'm mentioning this is because while we need affordable housing and we need certainly apartments, we don't only need apartments. And we have a tendency to think about housing, new housing as only being apartments. But if we're talking about people who, for example, might own businesses in the community, they may very well be interested in owning a home. The bill mentions very clearly that home ownership is the main vehicle by which people achieve equity and are able to retire, for example, and fund their family in terms of education. People who don't own anything are disadvantaged in this society. That may be right or it may be wrong, but it's the way it is. So I'm thinking that we ought to also consider, how do we make it possible for people who live in the community who might have a decent income, but may not have the down payment on a house, may not have the opportunity to get into housing because they lack some resources. Could we, since we are largely, not entirely, about 50% a small single-family community, isn't there some way that we could make those single-family houses more available to newcomers in the community, to people, to a more diverse population, to people who might own businesses in the community? Certainly that's been done at a federal level in the past. I don't see why we couldn't do it, for example, through a land trust, to help people to get into homes, because ultimately that's the way you advance in this society. And if we lock people into rentals, they're at a permanent disadvantage in terms of accumulating funds. So I would like to see that become part of our discussion, and not just rental housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion on this item? All right, well, we appreciate the update. We look forward to more. I know that some of these updates will continue to take shape, not just in future meetings, but in an upcoming agenda item on this meeting about the survey, which is where we expect that many of these will continue to take form. So we appreciate the update from that subcommittee. Our next subcommittee is Schools and Youth, and I know we have posted a document on that. And I see Ms. Anderson is screen sharing. Thank you. And Commissioner Marks, are you going to be presenting on this?
Yes, Bart trusted me to present.
I have no doubt.
We'll see what happens, but okay. So one of the big goals of the Education and Youth Subcommittee is to create a true working partnership between the city and the school district. So Bart and I met with the consultants and with Dr. Wells, who is superintendent of the Albany schools, Dr. Kim Trutane, who is the president of the school board. So we had a really great meeting. One of the things, and I'm not going by the pages, Nicole, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, public, that I'm not doing that. I just wrote my own little thing, as usual. But you could read it, because maybe you get better information. Anyway, one of the things we learned is that joint meetings between the school district and the city take place with also the University of California because of the village. So they're called 2x2x2 meetings. And what goes on at those meetings is not a lot of discussion. It's just a lot of reporting out. So there's not a dialogue. So that needs to be changed. So we're looking at that. We defined youth as 25 years old and younger. And we want to make sure that we include all youth in Albany, whether they go to Albany Public Schools. Then, for example, we don't want to forget the youth that are at McGregor High School, which is an old continuation school, but students can go there that are having a problem with getting enough credits to graduate, that type of thing. So we don't want to forget that group of students in Albany. We want to explore ways to help communication and have the city work collaboratively to address racial equity that impacts students and youth. It's really important that we talk to the youth. So we talk to the school superintendent and the president of the board about how we can engage, how Bart and I can be engaged with the youth. And we are looking at suggesting a joint group that includes students and the city that would meet monthly in Albany. We have a lot of work to do, but I feel very hopeful, and this meeting made me feel very hopeful. I just want to, under our agreed upon next steps, I just want to highlight two things under that. We did talk about the Instagram incident that happened, and I heard it again at the school board meeting this last week. It was brought up when the students were talking about an equity plan. So it's something that's alive and well here in Albany, but so we did talk about that. And moving on be past that. So under the agreed upon next steps, the one I'm most excited about, we will create a universal type of communication system for the community as a whole. So, I think we need to take into account every type of communication, whether it's the billboards on San Pablo or Solano, or the emails or whatever we're getting. Apparently we're not getting it out to enough people. And so I'm really excited about that being one of our goals. And I feel very hopeful after meeting with the superintendent and the president, and maybe I'm sure Bart has stuff to add from our meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Commissioner Grossman, do you indeed have anything to add?
I do indeed.
I bet.
Just a couple of things. I want to underline what Margie said about that being a very positive meeting and a real sense of openness coming from the superintendent and the board president to work directly with the city, where there hasn't been that sense of kind of desire for community work together. So I was excited about that, and the notion of creating a group that would be jointly from the school and from the city working together over time with youth, basically a group of youth, is, I think, a very exciting possibility. There was at one time a youth commission, an advisory group in Albany, and for some reason it was dropped several years ago. So we do have precedent for that sort of group, and I think it would be good to think about reinstating it. The school board president shared some data with us that the schools collect on a regular basis, and it included quite a bit of data related to how people feel about the schools, how supported they feel, how connected they feel, whether they experience any resistance to them in the school. So there is data that's being created that we can have access to and share. And some of it's out of date now, but they will be collecting it again soon. They do have a commission operating now working on issues of equity and achievement gaps in the school. So that's, I think, a very positive direction. So I'm excited, as Margie is, that we actually have a connection here that I think can go on and become an ongoing a connection for the city with the schools. But as Margie points out, we have to think about youth not just in terms of the schools. And I think we need to think about youth not just in terms of their issues with the schools, but in terms of being part of the community, and think about ways for the youth voice to be heard in community fairs, in city council, in commissions. We did at one time have high school students on the Social and Economic Justice Commission. And it was a great partnership and very helpful in many ways, both to the commission and to the schools. So I'd like to see us, and we will talk about how we can do that again in a more systematic way. That's it.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Grossman. And questions from commissioners. And I also wanted to make sure, I meant to last time, to ask Ms. Anderson or Dr. Holt if you have anything. I know you'll be heard a lot on our next agenda on 6-2, but if you also wanted to be heard, I think to make sure to indicate. Any questions from commissioners? I think I see Commissioner Geary.
Thank you. I just want to thank Commissioner Marks and Commissioner Grossman for doing a fine job. It sounds exciting. I'm excited to hear that we're getting the youth involved. Definitely a youth commission would be great because we want to make sure they're involved. I like that you're just not focusing on high school, middle schools, that we're looking at the community as a whole and bringing everyone together as one. So I'm excited. Wish I can join you on that commission too, but my hands are full. But I like the work that you're doing, and I'm behind you 100% on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments before we go to the public? Commissioner Grossman.
I did leave one thing out. We did talk about the possibility of doing some focus groups or listening sessions and perhaps doing a separate survey on youth rather than it being part of a larger survey because there are specific issues that are different and different ways of outreaching. So just want to mention that.
Thank you so much. At this point, we'll take public comment on this specific subcommittee. If you want to be heard, please raise your hand. Please don't wait till the end, to do so. But if you want to be heard, indicate so the commissioner, so if the city clerk can bring in the first speaker, I see Jeremiah Penguelo, and you should be on.
Hi, thanks. Good evening, everybody. When I was in Albany High School, I was in a leadership class, and just that one class made a huge difference in my entire life. I think it'd be great to offer a leadership class in middle school and maybe even get into elementary school. Who's to say you can't have young leaders, right? So it'd be nice to offer a leadership class. Middle school, elementary school would be great. I think when Principal Baines or Barnes, it was some guy, maybe about 6-7 years ago, Albany High School was not going to offer a leadership class, I guess due to a budget. They didn't have a leadership class for a year. So I offered to be the leadership teacher. And I said I was going to do it for free because it wasn't about the money. It was about doing the right thing. And that's what leadership is about. So if you can get the, leadership class down to the youth, that'd be such a great start. Because those kids are going to grow up to be leaders someday. And also, I noticed on Zoom, in the settings, you click a reaction, like a thumbs up, by a skin tone. Yeah, it's really sad. I don't know if everybody knew this about Zoom, but in the settings, the very last thing before you automatically do your video, when you sign in, the very last one at the bottom, it says choose your reaction skin tone. Yeah, the default set to yellow, which yellow skin is referred to Asian. And then it says light, medium, medium dark, and dark. So I don't know why we're all using this Zoom when we have to racially profile ourselves regarding a skin tone. Like, what does a skin tone have anything to do with video conferencing? And now all these kids and these youth are going to use Zoom for school, and now they have to choose a skin tone? Really? So we're making our kids choose a skin tone. I'm just saying skin tone has nothing to do with Zoom. That's probably been overlooked, but if you could check that out in the settings, I think it could be like wrong. So anyway, just want to bring a point of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next speaker is Corey Dosty, and I think the city clerk is bringing you in, and yeah, I think you're on now.
Hey, so like 2-3 things. One of them is sort of together. One, I'm not sure if folks have noticed because it was like buried in the Albany Community Action Facebook group, but different specific interest groups have been forming around mostly parents and their children who are in the schools, but there's an Albany Disability Squad that's like focused on IEP issues because that's a big issue with COVID and how our independent education plan is going to meet disabled youth's needs right now, and what is reasonable accommodation and making sure that the quality of education for disabled students doesn't slip. And then folks have been striking up conversation again about starting an LGBT plus group. I think it's aimed for parents of LGBT plus youth, but I asked about community membership in both and received an ambiguous, but yeah, maybe we're just getting started, we have to figure it out response. So I think that those are right. Those are vulnerable populations of youth, and that's one way to maybe get connected to those. These groups are just starting, so, but I think that could be, there's clearly a drive there, right? That these folks are seeing that there's a need to self-organize. And I think that could intersect well with this whole, right? Like looking at the youth and vulnerable populations. I know that I believe that there's a Black student group as well, right? Yeah, but these are the like new, mostly parent organized ones. So I want to make sure you knew about that. Just the other thing is I see restorative justice mentioned, and I know that that's been like the phrase that Albany has sort of gone with. I've been doing a lot of transformative justice workshops and discussing the difference. There was a really good workshop on that with Mia Mingus and Mimi Kim. It was in the We Take Care of Us series that Justice Teams Network does. And basically, restorative justice is often about restoring the status quo, whereas transformative justice seeks to transform it to be more equitable. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's my understanding, and I just wanted to raise that as a point of interest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I see Julie Winkelstein next. I think the clerk is bringing you in, and you're on.
Hi, I'm really glad I went after Corey. I just want to reiterate everything that Corey said. They made some really good points, particularly about thinking about students with disabilities and students that are members of the LGBT plus community, making sure that you're including their voices. I also wanted to comment on, I'm really glad that this meeting happened. So I'm excited also to hear about this meeting, and I'm glad that the school district and the city is potentially working together. It's always been a puzzle to me as to why that didn't happen before. And then I just had one, you see, I just make sure I got everything. Okay, and then my last, and I was really, really glad to see the agreed upon next steps include communication. I know that Margie mentioned that, and I hope that there will be a really active effort to do that. And if you would be interested in community members who would be interested in helping you with that, I would definitely be interested in doing that. And then my last thing is just a comment on wording on the under key goals. Number 2 is youth empowerment. And I would encourage you to choose a different word besides youth empowerment. I strongly believe that everybody has power. Sometimes their power is there's a block, there's a barrier, there's something in the way, but you can't really empower somebody. And so I would hope that you would find a word that would not imply that they have no power and that you are now going to give them power. And you could think of another way of wording that. I think that I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think I see our last public speaker is Brian Beal on this topic, and the clerk is bringing you in, and you should be on.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Corey was saying and the second speaker about these groups that are forming, particularly around parents of disabled students. They're having some of the most challenges. And these are really good groups to find out what's happening. But another thing I really wanted to mention, and this fits in with what the last speaker had to say, is there's a effort going on called Diversify Your Narrative. And that's a national effort that some of the students at Albany High are involved with. And I feel like the students are really doing a great job of portraying, racist situations, and I think, and struggling for the word empower, I think we just need to support the youth in their efforts, because in many ways they're doing a better job than we are. So hopefully these are some organizations that the SCJC can get input from in their work. And I'm certainly going to look forward to seeing more of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that concludes the public comment on this subcommittee. Commissioners, further discussion or questions about this subcommittee report? I think I saw Commissioner Marks and Commissioner Kerr.
Okay, I just wanted to add that the students of Albany and the students initiated the Diversify Our Narrative petition, got almost 1,000 signatures and presented it to the school board at their last meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerr.
I just wanted to thank the subcommittee for the report and the public for the comments. There were a couple things that I kind of had hoped to see. I'm very, very encouraged by the conversation across the community between the city and the school district. And I can tell you without a doubt that will help in so many ways if we can establish that. From my personal experience and from my just general awareness that people don't have the bandwidth to be on a school board and be on a city council committee and be part of a PTA. We need to be speaking with one voice as a community, and I'm really hopeful that we can double down on that. But the one thing that I really had hoped to see in the conversation from this group was a discussion of the ability of youth to vote, 16 and up, to be able to vote for school district positions, for school board positions, I should say. So I hope that you can take that back with some friendly suggestions of something that might be on the agenda and something that would certainly be part of a community discussion. Maybe I'm the only person who thinks that's a good idea. So that's not where we want to go if that's the case. But there may be others who think that 16-year-olds have the ability to decide whether or not their school board members are actually providing them with service.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Any other comments or questions? All right, we're excited by that report and by that progress, and look forward to hearing more. Our third subcommittee of our Equity Action Plan is our subcommittee on policing. Just for clarification for all, because it is a there's a lot going on. This is distinct from the working group that was created by City Council to look at short-term, develop a working group or a task force to develop a sort of more short to mid-term set of police strategies for oversight and policy, dealing with oversight policy and public engagement with policing. And the subcommittee of SEJC is tasked with looking at the Equity Action Plan and a more of a 10-year horizon. So I know that it's very, that with different groups, it's easy to, confound what each one is doing. Commissioner Kerr, do you want to give the update, or would you rather me? I think you're muted, Judy.
I'm happy to give a brief update, but I'm kind of leaning toward Margie's approach that we don't really need to go through these notes, which really in many ways just sort of echo each other. I think the most important thing that I'd like to convey to the public tonight is that there are two committees working. One is at the council level, one is at the SEJC level regarding policing. And my personal way of actually conceptualizing why we have two is that the SEJC has always been the home base for issues related to racial equity, and it only naturally follows that any issues related to policing and police behavior within the city would ultimately, within a 10-year or 15-year or 20-year time frame, fall back to the SEJC. We have an immediate and a very heartfelt and a very appropriate public concern right now regarding policing in our community and in every community across the country. And that is the reason for the commission or the committee that's functioning at the council level. So I see the SEJC's role as being the placeholder going forward for whatever the group at the council level decides. And I'm hoping that the council will see the wisdom in that, and that we will have some ability to continue to incorporate policing and review of whether the police are providing us with public safety in the SEJC work plan. So that's kind of my two minutes on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. I concur. And then just as you can see from the notes, these are sort of rough notes taken as we meet, not finished product, I'll just say. And there's a lot of wordsmithing that we will be doing. So, over the next meetings, we reviewed public comment responses, from the last meeting. We discussed additional stakeholders and partners and tried to think, broadly and conceptually about how we would like to define those. We discussed the kinds of information and questions that we would like to ask. Some of this speaks forward, as each of these have done, to the next agenda item on the survey. The kind of questions that we would like to be able to get answers from the community about. and that's section 4. And we discussed as well some different modes of survey processes and examples of surveys. So some of that will come up again in the next agenda item. Yeah, with that being said, why don't we move toward questions from the other commissioners, and then toward public comment. Thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. So right now I can't see all commissioners. It's the, let me see if I can, there we go. So questions and comments from other commissioners, as a preliminary round. Commissioner Grossman.
Will you also be seeking input from the police?
Yes. So one of the things that that Dr. Holt and Ms. Anderson suggested as a possibility for our next meeting was, expanding our meeting, as you all did on schools, expanding our meeting to include both staff and invitation to the police chief. So we will, of the subcommittee. So we'll, that's the hope that was expressed as we closed our subcommittee meeting.
And one more thing, it's still, the difference between the two groups is still a little fuzzy for me, specifically as it has to do with the question of a vehicle for police oversight. Is the question of a permanent police oversight commission, or whatever you want to call it, is that now on the agenda of the other group, or is it still on the agenda of this group? I would hope it would be on the agenda of this group, because the initial discussion and the motion for the other group was not about oversight. It was about a review of specific police policies. So I just don't want to see the issue of police oversight fall between the cracks somehow.
I think I see Commissioner Kerr.
Bart, I appreciate your question. I think it goes to the heart of the matter. I see the role of all of these subcommittees, as is the role of the Social and Economic Justice Commission, to advise the council. So we can, as a subcommittee, continue to have a conversation about oversight within the city of Albany of our police department. And we can make that recommendation to the council going forward. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that this dual track may result in one car on the track getting ahead of the other cars. So I appreciate your comments, and I think we'll take that back under advisement to our subcommittee work. Thanks.
I mean, for me, the only thing I'd add to it is trying to keep to the sort of keep in my head, because there is a lot of room for overlap, and also as you know, Commissioner Grossman, there was also a shift in the motion, as it evolved, and so that the final motion that created the working group was somewhat different from the initial one that you referred to. So it is my understanding, I'm only one voice, that group will, in aiming to create a broader, broad-based community group, that will charge that group, with investigating a wide range of things, not simply policy, but we will see. In terms of time frame, that I've tried to take to heart the idea that the goal of the Equity Impact Plan is developing a vision of the city in 10 years, and of really trying to absorb from the people that we're able to access, which is obviously a crucial point, and come up in the next one, their goals of how they want, how they want public safety to be, engaged with by the city government, and in what forms and through what measures, and what their experience with it has been, and how that helps to shape their hopes and understandings of it going forward. So I don't want to predetermine, what, would come out of that survey. But certainly it would strike me as something that we would want to know as we start to put together our sense of where we hope to be in 10 years, whether that ends up incorporating things that are already done more quickly by another group, or whether it ends up identifying the things that, even as that group does certain things, identifying the aspects of the public will that haven't yet been met. So I just, so the other piece, yeah, so that's the piece for me. I don't want to appear to be prejudging what I think the survey will be. I have my own opinion, which I've stated many times to the point of boring everybody else, but I don't want to prejudge what public opinion will be on the question of oversight. Commissioner Gary.
Thank you, Chair Downs. I just don't want, I feel like that that things are going to get lost and having these two, and it doesn't feel right. I mean, it needs to be, directives needs to be set, and the ultimate goal needs to be accomplished. Like you said, we're not meeting the public needs by simply going back and forth, having these subcommittees. I mean, I know we're trying to put everything in place, but I guess that's one of my concerns, is that things are going to get lost in the shuffle, and then we're going to miss out on what we're supposed to be doing as a commission. So that's my only concern. I mean, that's, as long as we keep moving forward, I mean, that's just something I think you and Judy should think about moving forward with both of these. So.
Thank you. All right, I think at this point, it's a good time to look for public comment. If you'd like to be heard on this, please indicate by raising your hands. I see and again, please, do so relatively early in the process, so we're not taken by surprise at the end. If you'd like to be heard, I see Jeremiah Penguelo, and I think you're on.
Hi, good evening. Is the police chief here right now?
No.
Oh, that kind of shows how much they really care about this, because I'm trying to say something so the police chief could hear this. So yeah, maybe they should be in the next meeting. That'd be great, right? Show that they care. The police chief, a positive suggestion could be to talk to the Kensington police chief. Obviously, they know each other. Kensington does pay Albany, I think, $300,000 every year or every 2 years. So Albany Police Department could dispatch Kensington, because Kensington doesn't have a dispatcher anymore, right? But so if the police chief could communicate with other police departments on how best to police, have some communication with other police departments, not just trying to figure it out by ourselves all the time. And this other thing with this RV thing, it's like a municipal code. Are we supposed to be policing municipal codes? Because there's no smoking on Solano Avenue, right? That's a municipal code as well. I know the fire chief a couple years ago, he ordered a bunch of signs, and I went up and down Solano and made sure pretty much every business has a sticker that displays no smoking on Solano. That way, members of the public are aware of the municipal code. Because if you can't see a sign telling you not to do it, you just don't know. But now there's all these signs, and hopefully people aren't smoking on Solano because there's restaurants and kids and all this stuff. So what are these police supposed to be policing? I mean, are they supposed to policing affordable housing? Because that's what an RV is. So I don't know. Just if we can get more surveys, and it'd be nice to see more Albany police departments on bicycles, make a visible presence around the town, and more meet and greet, like coffee with the cops. Like, that's great. Like, people get to know them. So there's obviously some things wrong with the police force and some things that could be worked out. But I think overall, the Albany police force is doing a great job keeping the community safe. And I know they got that in their heart. But there's obviously a few policies that need to be implemented, and we'll work on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Julie Winkelstein, you're next, and I think the city clerk is moving you in. There you are, you should be on.
All right, hi, thank you. I just had a couple brief comments. I wanted to reiterate what Bart said about the police oversight, and I think maybe Janelle was referring to that too, that how important it is that we don't want to lose that conversation. I also realized today that there's a group of people that you may not think of. I think that there are people, I guess you would call them allies of people who are traditionally oppressed or mistreated by the police, who might not want to call the police even if something happens because they don't want to get somebody else in trouble, don't want to get somebody else killed, for example. So if somebody broke into my car that was a person of color, I probably wouldn't call the police because I would be afraid the police would come and kill them. And so I think also they should be thinking about maybe the allies or the people that are worried about the ramifications of calling the police. And I remember reading something a few years ago about Oakland had created their own kind of self-policing, and I don't know if it's still going on, where they didn't actually call the police because they were so afraid of the outcome of doing that. I don't know. I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up. I just wanted to bring up as a group that you could be considering as people who maybe, anyway, what I just said. And the sample surveys, I looked at the sample surveys that were included in this item, and I'm hoping that you will be creating your own survey and not relying on sample surveys, and we'll really start with what you're hearing from the community, what you, especially if you were actually to reach out, get the community to come to a meeting, and besides the three of us who are here tonight, and really create your own. And I know people keeps using that expression, you don't want to recreate the wheel, but I actually am a very strong believer in recreating the wheel, because you just never know what's going to happen when you recreate a wheel. You may come up with a really cool wheel that nobody ever thought of. So I would really encourage you to not start with somebody's sample, but start with really your expertise and what you're hearing and what you're learning. Thank you.
Thank you. And Corey Dostey is next. I think the city clerk will be moving you in, and you should be on.
Yes. Hello again. To Julie's note, the Community Ready Corps in Oakland has done a lot of self-organizing, creating community patrols. There's a lot of really good organizing in Oakland, including Mental Health First, which is volunteer-based. It's moved from, they were only able to do it in Sacramento. But yeah, I also want to amp what Jeremiah said about what are police supposed to be policing, and I feel like that is an important issue. I also don't want to see lost between these two, and I feel like that's not being spotlighted much. I'm not sure if it's being kept on the table, but that's one of my primary concerns is, do we like the traffic in Berkeley? They moved to shift traffic enforcement and traffic management out of police, out of armed police, and I think out of police altogether. And I think that needs to be on the table, the reimagining safety as a whole. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I'm worried about that getting lost in the cracks. I also, looking at disenfranchised communities, I don't know if you meant to put males, but I certainly want to amp trans people and LGBT people in general. I'm sure that was just trying to create a long list. Is you lose track of everything. It's hard to keep track of everything. Yeah, and I thank you for these resources. I haven't had a chance to click through to further links. I'm really interested in talking about the definition of community policing and if it is what we want. I do feel like that is not happening at the working group and is appropriate for within SEJC. And so I'm really interested in that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the public comment on this topic. So now we come back to commissioners. Further discussion or questions from commissioners? All right, so seeing none, we can wrap this up. I appreciate all three of this part of the 6-1. Appreciate all three of the subcommittees. I know a lot of the work that they're doing feeds into our next agenda item. So we can move to that, which is 6-2, which is the Equity Impact Plan Survey. I believe that Ms. Anderson and Dr. Holt will, will speak to us about developments on that. Then we can do first round of questions and initial comments from us, then public comment, and then follow-up discussion. Does that work for you, Nicole?
Yeah, I think that works. I guess I know there's 3 items that kind of all lay in that we've kind of played a role in supporting you on. So we're going to do our best to stay succinct with those items based on your agenda, but there may be a little overlap, so forgive us because I think they all connect. And so Dr. Shelley, I think you're there, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just for a moment, just to give a little context to this discussion about the survey. And want to remind everyone about kind of our role and purpose in this, just to really give context. And I think Chair Downs, you mentioned it earlier. I think Commissioner Kerr mentioned it, that all of this work is really feeding into developing this racial equity impact plan. So I want to just keep reminding us that there's a lot of moving parts, and all of this work really contributes to having a plan for the city that City Council can consider. So as we think about the concept of the survey, is just one of many components of that conversation. And so before I kind of jump into that, I just want to give a little context and reminder of kind of, again, what we want to help the commission do in terms of moving this agenda forward, is reminding us just kind of where we are in this space. There's a little bit of like our building of capacity we want to continue to do, because we're starting to see us unearth some things and start to learn more. And there's a lot of data, a lot of information we don't have. And so I just want to commend you on that, and want to just remind even the public who's watching that this work is really tough work, because what we're trying to do is address racial inequities. We're trying to address social inequities. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of energy right now around this work. And there's a lot of people are like, hey, we want change, we want change. And what we also recognize is that as this work continues to get harder and harder and harder, when we ask people about who wants to be a part of that change, who wants to change, that internal work, that's where we start to see that this work gets really difficult, and everyone's not really ready for that. And so this is where, as consultants, we're continuously kind of assessing where we're going. But you'll notice that, like, who wants to lead this work? That's where there's not a whole lot of people want to stand and lead this. So I say this kind of collectively to the commission, but also to the entire community. It requires everyone to be raising their hand at all times, even when this work is really hard. And that's going to be something that will continue to be tougher and tougher as we continue to unpack a lot of the kind of nuances that have to be addressed throughout the city. I do want to remind us that, the work, when we go into the survey conversation prior to that we really are understanding that this is very difficult work. And as I say, city leaders, commissioners, obviously city council, police department, anyone who represents the ability to influence change, to influence decisions. I want to remind you this work is about mindset work, and that it's going to be very difficult to close the gaps inside of the city. And these are all the different gaps that come up in the data. It'll be very difficult to close those without continuously working on our mindset, our belief system, our mental models. So I want to say that because that's the spirit of the way that we try to facilitate and consult, because ultimately it's not going to be about just changing a policy and changing a few practices and thinking that voila, it's going to last. This work is about making sure people believe in this work so that it lasts beyond just this few years and few months that you're doing this work now. So I just want to say that just to remind us, because there's many of you that might be feeling like, oh my God, this is just like, we're going nowhere, or we're not going fast enough, or we don't understand, it's messy. All of these different pieces, this is part of the work. And a lot of this is going to be around our mindset and our belief system to really understand how to lead for equity, in particular racial equity in Albany. Just want to remind the group about the 4 agreements. And I share this because publicly, I want to make sure we understand that we're continuously building safe space in Albany within these working groups to really go deeper into this work. And I want to respect and honor the fact that safety is still not quite there for everyone. And so safety and discomfort are 2 different things. I want to keep reminding us of that discomfort has to happen in this work in order for us to make change and to grow as a community. But safety is important. So we have to continue to create safe space for people to feel they can engage in this work. And that's going to take time when you have a history of people being harmed and a history of not feeling safe. So I just want to reiterate that as we continue to go deeper into the purpose and kind of process that when we're talking about the survey, but also our other agenda items. So just reminding SCJC, as you continue to work together, as staff continues to work together in collaboration, the school district working together, any of the entities, just remember these 4 agreements to help you continue to do this work. We encourage you, Continue to stay engaged, and even when it gets uncomfortable, stay at the table, stay in these conversations. Agree to experience discomfort. Be okay with the fact that this work creates the work that's going to come from the surveys, for example. There are going to be stories and information that is going to be unearthed that will create discomfort, especially for spaces where power exists. So we want to be okay with staying uncomfortable so we can really grow as a group. Speaking your truth is going to be important, that every perspective is on the table. So I love SEJC, the fact that you're continuously speaking your truth, but also being okay with your truth may not be the same as someone else's. And that's going to be some of the discomfort of this work. And the last piece, and most important, is that there are so many great public comments. There are great perspectives that have been shared that as consultants we've heard, but we want to remind you that you have to expect and accept non-closure. And that means that this work is long-standing work. It goes slow to go fast. We say it all the time, but everything is not going to be done right away. And so there will be a sense of kind of being let down or feeling like it's not going fast enough, or that answer didn't come when I needed it. And so we want to be mindful that non-closure is part of this work. It's messy work, but it is moving forward. And I just want to commend you on really staying in these agreements because we've really gotten to witness that as consultants in terms of working with each of the groups that are connected to this SEJC work. So I just want to remind you of that. And for the community, remembering that we are still trying to stay centered on the concept of racial equity. And so when that happens, again, discomfort comes when we talk about these courageous conversations about racism. And so this is where we have to use these agreements to really keep us centered and focused on the work. Okay. So before I turn it over to my fearless colleague, Dr. Shelley Holt, I do want to remind you about where this survey kind of fits in and kind of remind you of the work we've been doing together. Kind of the process. We've been spending time really trying to go deeper into really unpacking what does racial equity actually mean. And that's a constant process. Let's define it, have common language across all of the entities that are working on this work. Using our subcommittee work has been powerful, phenomenal, and I want to just commend all of you for your extra time and energy on that. There's a lot of more work to be done, but I just want to commend you on the fact that in the process, using the subcommittee work is really powerful to be a catalyst for bringing others to the table, as your community mentioned, who else is at the table. But starting with that subcommittee to really focus the work is huge. Collection of the data, you all are starting that process and starting to ask questions, and you're going to go through that process of reviewing both qualitative and quantitative data, which does not only include surveys. I want to say that really clearly, that surveys are one of many ways to collect voices. So we're going to talk about how those can happen throughout this process. Just remembering our roles. I just appreciate SEJC continuously wrestling with, okay, what is our role in this process, whether it's weighing in on the policing, whether it's weighing in on any of the issues that address kind of the role of city governance and you bringing in your recommendations. Constantly redefining that and really recognizing the impact of your work is going to be powerful. And so I just want to commend you on that, but reminding us about just remembering our role so that we have context for doing our work. And of course, collaboratively, you all are going to be able to come out with your racial equity impact plan that you can recommend to City Council. And of course, create possibly the recommendation for how these resolutions and maybe policies will be addressed around just the whole concept of equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is how SEJC really kind of, the core of the essence of your work. And so just want to remind you of that, kind of setting the tone for the process around the survey. I'm going to let Dr. Shelley Holt jump in just to kind of give a little bit of a deeper dive to make some connections to where the survey fits into our conversation around the subcommittee work, because they kind of go hand in hand. So Dr. Shelley, I'm going to let you jump in and then I'll come back in and speak a little bit more about the item.
Thank you. And well, can you hear me? Everything okay? All right. So thank you, Nicole, and hello, everyone. So I wanted to, in the spirit of continuing this work of reminding us that this is what going slow to go fast looks like, because we hear those terms, but oftentimes it's like, well, what does that mean? So just a little trip down memory lane of what we've done so far. And just to be very clear, this is a lot that we've gotten done so far in a very short amount of time. And again, I know it doesn't feel like much, but when we start to unpack and unravel the layers that are within this work, even for the subcommittee members and the city council and the staff themselves, there is layers of this work that have to be done. So just a reminder of the work that we've done with the SCJC committee. I believe this is our third meeting with this committee. And from our last meeting, our second one, we created 4 subcommittee groups that are going to each look at and unpack each area. It's important to note that unpacking each area was a lot of work. It took us for each group 2 meetings just to get this far, to just unpack what affordable housing, business development, policing, and education is, just for the small group that was there. So you can imagine, if it takes that much just for a couple of people to come together, why it is that we have to go slow, so that, you know, this many people understand it, and then this many, and then this many, and so it starts to grow. It does not mean that we all need to understand the same thing. It means that the process is more of a ripple than it is just, you know, kind of a whoosh to get this done. And this is what makes sure that the work is sustainable over time. Each of those subcommittees was tasked with 3 tasks, so to speak. One is to contribute to the racial equity statement. Another is to come up with some sort of community survey or a way for the community to be involved. Because the entire purpose of breaking down each of these areas a bit smaller was to assess, how do we get everyone involved? What does this mean to us? Who needs to be involved? How do we involve staff? How is that different from involving the community? How is involving the community at large different from involving the youth? And how do we look at different factions of the community? Because involving everyone, as you can see, is not an easy task. And then the other piece is to contribute or make recommendations to the equity impact action plan that will then go to the SCJC, from the SCJC to the City Council. And the City Council may then, particularly in the area of the policing one, may work with the task force or the work group that's being created to create the task force. They may be working there, and other areas where this work would begin to flourish. So understanding that going slow to go fast is necessary, but we have been doing a lot, and it doesn't always feel like much, but just getting to these layers of understanding and unpacking historical racial context within that, and doing that for just the city of Albany. So we're looking at it this big, and we're also looking at it this big in preparation for how we're going to approach the community. So the way we do this, if we scroll up, thank you, Nicole. The way we do this is through the water of systems change process. And so to begin this work, we've been sharing this article and this process with the teams, and they've actually been working through it. So our first meeting with each of the committees was to unpack their area within the 6 conditions of systemic change that typically hold these pieces into place. And so we started talking about the structural pieces, including the policies, the practices, and the resource flows or the funding that explicitly hold with the current condition in place. This is it's a kind of an in-depth form of a needs assessment. Why would we want to do a needs assessment? Because we want to know what this really means. What does it mean for us as a community? And then from there, we can figure out how we're going to go about changing it on a global level, and so that it's sustainable over time. Nobody wants a one and done. Then we had each group also start to delve into the relationships and connections, the power dynamics that are somewhat semi-explicit, but we know they're there. And so you see that in the first set of notes, and what I have affectionately termed the orange chart that many of the teams worked on in their first meeting. And then that was followed by understanding the thinking or the mental models that have continued to perpetuate and hold this in place. Once we began to unpack that, moving to the next conversations about how do we now get the community involved, get the community to understand this, and what communities need to be involved are now fed through that process. So that moves us into our next piece, which is how did we start getting all these surveys together? And so with each of the surveys, we're really looking at what is it that, and when I say each of the surveys, we're talking about one for education committee, one for the business and economic development, one for the housing group, and of course, one for the policing group, which may at some point be combined or worked within what the larger city council was doing with the work group and the task force. So with each one, though, we wanted to start off with, why are we doing this? What do we want to know from the community? And that led us to just really starting to explore what you see in the notes, and the time that we spent was a lot of brainstorming. Why? Because in order to do this, we have to start dreaming about what the desired state is going to look like, and what do we need to know to understand our current state, and then also to be able to process how to get to that desired state. And what we're doing in this kind of dreaming that we're doing is looking at what will Albany look like 10 years from now. Why 10 years? Because research tells us that any sustainable change that we're going to create in any organization, it takes 1 year of actual just planning, which is what we're in now. 3 years then to start implementing and see sustainable, see some progress, some quantifiable or qualifiable progress. 5 years before it becomes part of the ingrained system of the work, and 10 years before we see sustainable change happen. So that's why we're looking at 10 years. It's not just, kind of a number we pulled out. It's because that's what we know works. Challenge is because with it, most organizations is getting that far and getting people to stay on board long enough to see this through to its completion. So we really looked at each group of identifying the purpose of each of their surveys. And then from there, we started talking a bit about the process we would want to use in order to garner this information. And it went through the purpose and then the components and then the process. So I'll speak to them in that order. The components, from the purpose, we started to quantify or qualify each of these into various components. Why? Because we wanted to see various parts of this issue. And as we start to ask questions or delve deeper into the data, you're going to want to, as you design your survey, you want to think about how it's going to be reported out. You don't want to kind of design it haphazardly, and then it comes time for the report out. And you're like, well, where are the themes? What is it that we were really looking for? What did we find out about those areas? So identifying those components was part of the process. And then the next piece was looking at what are the mechanics of how we're going to distribute this. So we talked about various ways that we want all factions of our community to be involved. And this is where, quite frankly, we really need the community to let us know what are the best ways to reach everyone. A few of the callers mentioned earlier that, it seems like we're honing things in and keeping things in. Trust that that's not on purpose. It's one for them to grow and learn together, because racial work is very challenging work, because everyone's challenging their own views, but also because in order for us to really expand these efforts, we've got to have your thoughts and your input as to how to best reach people. How do we best ask these questions so that we're not offensive? Because we know that when people are offended, that literally starts blocking receptors in their brain for logical thought, and now we're not going to get the results that we need. So there's so many different facets to this that we need your thoughts on. The final piece of the survey creation is the actual questions that we're going to ask. And so we started brainstorming some of the questions that we were looking at. We've been pulling various surveys from all over the country, actually the world, because we've looked at some international data as well, to really begin to draft or craft something that would be very unique to Albany. Knowing that, though, we want these surveys to be co-crafted with the community. The challenge is getting everyone in the room or involved. So what we ask that you do at this point is, if you have certain questions or topics that you believe need to be shared with any of these groups, please, by all means, email or send that information into your commissioner. Send it to either Ms. Anderson or myself. We are incorporating all the comments that we're receiving, and they've been great. For those of you who have sent them, Julie, Corey, several of you, thank you. We need those kind of clarification. That's where the involvement comes. We need more. So we ask you to share this with your communities. Like, hey, do you know that they're about to do a survey on community policing in our community? And we have the opportunity to put some ideas out there that we want to know about. Absolutely, share that with folks and have them send that information in. This is meant to be an inclusive process, but inclusion takes time, especially when we're developing the processes as we move through them. So for the next meeting, what we have is we're going to provide a draft, meaning we're taking all the information that we have so far and starting to look at what a draft of a survey would look like. does not mean it's going to be the survey, but we want to make sure the commission members understand kind of what they're getting themselves into. And also, if you notice, our next meeting is also with staff. We have to consider the capacity of the Albany community to be able to administer these surveys, count up the responses, and begin to the reporting out process. While we can definitely support that, that is definitely something you want staff to be involved in. There's also this piece of we might have information already there that we're just not sure about, or that we've never used in a certain way. You know, how many times we get into these communities and we start to see, oh, well, you had this survey and this survey, but they just didn't know that they could be used in a different way. So some of this information may be there. And before we start just kind of randomly throwing out surveys to folks, we want to see what's already there. So in our next set of meetings, we are going to be reviewing somewhat of a draft to see what it could look like. And then from there, look at, okay, staff, what do you think needs to be involved? How do we want to look at moving forward with this? And do we already have some of this data that we can begin to look at, and we may not need for the surveys to be too cumbersome? So hopefully that gives you a bit of an outline as far as the association and how we want to involve the community. Again, I can't reiterate enough. If you have ideas of ways to involve the community, please, by all means, let us know. We are here to serve the community, but we are not from the community. That has to come from each and every one of you. Thank you.
Dr. Pope, just one piece to add. I'm not sure. Is that my feedback? I apologize. Okay.
Sounds better now.
Okay. Yeah, one piece to add is just clarification on the concept of the survey. So I know that that word has been thrown out a few times. And so remember, in the racial equity impact plan to recommend to City Council, there's kind of a large community survey that is the conversation around what SEJC will collect as a whole. But then you have your subcommittee work, which is specific to focus areas, which you already reported on. So the community survey will really include all of those components, if that makes sense. Because ultimately, while I think, for example, Commissioner Marks and Grossman mentioned that they're focused on, you know, obviously education and young people, and that survey needs to be specific to that, and it needs to be a little bit more robust, right, around that concept. That there's a smaller piece of that needs to show up in the larger community survey, because you do want to have a collective amount of data for the entire community. So I want to make sure I clarified if there's any confusion about surveys. Like it will feel like there's all these different surveys, but ultimately the goal is that you have this large community survey that's really the collective that will push into the data that will show up in that action plan. But your subcommittees really are doing their own research, their own kind of data collection. That's where those, I call them smaller versions of surveys, show up, because they're very specific. And so I think collectively as SEJC, kind of want to pass the mic back over about questions and comments you may have about where this kind of next step goes. But as Dr. Shelley said, our next upcoming subcommittee meetings, we wanted to help support the evolution of each of your surveys, which will feed into that larger community survey. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. So preliminary questions or comments from the commissioners. Again, this is, I know there's some overlap, but this is primarily, we're on 6.2 on a discussion of the survey. So preliminary questions or comments from commissioners. I'm having a hard time seeing everybody right now, but let me, there we go. Thank you. So Commissioner Grossman, sorry, I couldn't see you before.
Yeah, 2 points. You know, the community survey may wind up being a package of surveys. You know, in other words, the youth survey may be an element of it. You know, the housing survey may be another element of it. It may not be just one survey that everybody takes, but the data comes together at the end when we make our case. The other thing is, Julie made a comment about reinventing the wheel, but you know, part of the survey research enterprise, as I'm sure you're aware, is, you know, as in all science, is to build on what's come before, and especially when you're doing surveys, as you well know, if you can use items that have been tested and found to be effective, it really saves you time, because You know, you may have a great item in mind, but when you give it to people, they don't know what the hell you're meaning. So, you know, it becomes important to use what's out there. That doesn't mean you do the same survey that everybody else has done. One of the things I'm sort of struggling with a little bit as I listen to this is time frame. Because we had talked about having this equity plan for the council next, you know, really we talked about having it in September. We're in September, and this is not going to be done in September, clearly. You know, this enterprise, even if we move very quickly to devise survey or surveys, it's going to take months to get it out there, to get it collected, to get it analyzed, and then to put it in a framework that the council can use. So it seems to me, you know, if our impact report says there should be a survey, that's one thing. If our impact report says there was a survey and here we learned from it, here's what we learned from it, that's another thing. And we're not going to get there very quickly. That's going to take a number of months. And I think we need to sort of have some idea in mind of what that time frame is going to be, because we are facing the fact that come January, the council changes and the commission changes. So I think we need to talk about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. Other questions or preliminary comments? Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, thanks, Bart. I share a lot of the concerns that you just raised, but one of the things, and maybe it's magical thinking on my part, but one of the things that I had hoped with our survey is that it not only establishes a measure of the community where we are now, but that it could be used in subsequent years to measure if we've made progress. So in creating our equity statement, I'm hoping that the survey can be also a measure of the community's equity status, if you will. That's probably not the best way to phrase that, but my hope was that we are not looking at a one-shot, thank you very much, this is what we know experience with this survey, but that we have something that we can use going forward to see if we're moving toward improved equity in the city.
Thank you. Other commissioners, questions or preliminary comments? I think the comments both of Commissioner Grossman and Kerr are well taken, and I think the question of timing of how, and for me the other question that has come up already is of dissemination, right? And they're interrelated. How are we going to get the survey out there, and how does that also speak to the question of when we'll get it back and what we'll be able to incorporate it in? I think clearly if, we wouldn't be able to incorporate survey findings, as Commissioner Grossman said, into something in September, but do we have a likelihood of being able to get them back in time to incorporate them into what I do think is especially for us urgent of crafting something that is our exit, right? Crafting something before our terms expire. And so making sure that we have something in hand, whether it's late October, early November, that we can utilize to make sure that we are fulfilling at least our part of the mission that council gave us. So I don't know, it looks like Nicole, you're ready to be heard. Yeah.
I think this is a question that Dr. Shelley and I want to make sure we get clarity from SCJC. And this is something that I want to remind us that as we came in, in that July timeframe, and we hit the ground running. And there are some things that we kind of did ahead of time, which we would not normally do, but there was a real charge and a clear kind of, let's get this done now. And we have to keep reminding, that this particular work is a long-term process. It takes about a year to plan. But we also want to acknowledge that there's a quick time frame to really show progress of the work. And of course, this obviously this commission has some real desires to really show progress. And again, Dr. Shelley reiterated, you've shown that. So one of the things we want to do is make sure, and we have been doing, is really capturing the progress so that when that what we look at is maybe this, I think it's September 21st, if I'm not mistaken, is really being able to have what I call kind of an interim kind of update, report about the progress you've made, because you are building the plan right now. And I don't want you to think you're not doing the work. I think the concern, and this is where we need the clarity from SEJC, is that there were clear comments when we first came in as consultants about our roles. And so we could easily come in and give you a blueprint of what your action plan could look like, and you literally can fill in the blanks and we can have it done tomorrow. But we don't see that as our role. We want to do the work with you. We can give you the survey. We can develop it for you. That's not the issue. The issue is that this commission really is doing the work. And that's, I think, what takes a little bit longer. So I want to make sure we clarify and that you do that even with our subcommittee time, is really help us to know the pace that you want to go. Because as consultants, we can easily fill in the blanks and we can give you the plan, right? It's not a difficult task to do, but what we do is a disservice to the community, because there are so many voices that need to be a part of this process. That's not inclusion to have consultants come in and do it for you. And again, our role is not to do the work, right? We're to support the work. So I just want to make sure we have some clarity on the pace of this, because I don't want you to feel discouraged that it's going to take a year to have this plan be developed and then recommended to our city council in, May, June, July, right? I mean, literally that sounds like a really long ways away, but I tell you, that survey collection, including the community, the task force work that's going to happen with policing, all of this body of work takes time. And so we want to make sure that we really hear from you, how you see our role in supporting you, because there's some things we could fast forward, but we don't want to go into the space of then taking the place of your work. So we want to make sure we're really clear about that. I want to be really candid, because that was something that was shared in the very beginning when we started, is what the role of the consultants are and what the role of SEJC is. I want to make sure we just get your thoughts on that as we move forward.
Thank you. And Dr. Holt, did you want to be heard also, or I didn't? No. Okay, good. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I didn't want to be, cutting you out. Let's go to public comment, and then we can come back and have some more general discussion about this. So if anyone of the public would like to be heard specifically on the survey, please raise a hand. I see one hand being raised. And City Clerk will bring in Jeremiah Penguelo. And you should be on.
Yes, thank you very much. I do see that we're not going to have another meeting until October. So this is it for a whole month, I guess. Is that what's happening? All right. So if that's so, if we're not meeting for an entire another month, how could we communicate with you? If any members of the public have a positive suggestion, I mean, what do they do? Email you? I mean, are there going to be some more focus groups? I'm not sure what's going on with this survey. I'm not sure if you guys even are going to get to this mental health, this thing, but I mean, I'll say my last thing and that's it. How do you expect a community to stay mentally healthy? It should be called mentally healthy, right? Or mentally unhealthy, because that's what you're dealing with, is mentally unhealthy people. But it's called mental health. So a lot of that's preventative, right? Like if you offer a shower, maybe I don't go crazy scratching my head because, I could take a shower. But here I am 6 months down the road, I might need some mental health services because I'm wondering what's going on in the world. Where I can't take a shower. It's becoming a mental health issue because I'm wondering if the world's just ignoring the fact that people need to take a shower, So, yeah, and also, yeah, Berkeley totally stole Albany's money. Completely stole Albany's money. That Berkeley mental health place. I went over there with some people, and they got fleas from the Berkeley mental health facility right there in Berkeley, in their building. I mean, they went there to get help, but they got fleas. I think they closed the building down afterwards, and it was condemned for fleas. But I really think Albany should get the mental health portable thing. I think that's a great investment. And keep up the good work, everybody. And I know this is a tough thing to work on, equity and racial. So just everybody love everybody, right? ELE. So if you could check out that Zoom thing on the settings, I don't know why we have to pick a skin tone. Has nothing to do with video conferencing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Not seeing further public comment. Let's come back to the commission. I think before we went to public comment, Ms. Anderson had asked us for our thoughts. If I understood right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, please. Our thoughts on balancing the sort of timing of the survey, the timing of our terms, the timing of the report, and what we want from it, and what we want in what time frame. Is that in the ballpark, Nicole?
Yeah, and this kind of how you see our roles. I think it's always important to revisit roles, like I mentioned earlier, because as the work keeps going, like we tend to like kind of focus on it, and just want to make sure we're just clear, because some of the comments, are really things we take to heart, and we want to support as best we can. But again, knowing our roles and how you feel about the work is important for us. So this survey kind of surfaced some of those comments. So it's just kind of in response to some of the comments from the commissioners. Yeah.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Grossman. I think you might be muted, Bart.
Thank you. It seems to me that we could make several interim reports to the council. But it seems to me a realistic goal is probably to be done with a report with the surveys done, analyzed, and included, and a report probably, I would think, no earlier than sometime in December in terms of a finished product. So that really what we may be thinking about is more a report that will go to the new council. So that we can all, so they and the new commission can begin in the same place. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think if we try to do it faster than that, we will miss things. And we will really not have the time to get the kind of community involvement that we need to have this be meaningful. So I'm suggesting that's how we conceive of our time frame.
Commissioner Marks. I think you might be muted, Margie.
Okay. I think Bart and actually Jeremiah brings up a good point. We're not meeting for another month. If we want to get work done, the only public input we're getting right now is at the SEJC meetings because our subcommittees are not public. And I feel like I personally need a lot more input from the public before I'm ready to do this youth and student survey. We haven't even officially talked to a youth yet. So I think I like December as a tentative timeline. I think we might need to meet more often than we're meeting and somehow, get more public input. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners want to be heard. Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, it concerns me that we're hamstringing or we're perceiving our role as one that ends in December. And maybe there is truly a structural issue that we should address next year after we're all in a different place. But if the work that we do has to be completed by the end of our terms, then I think we're really creating for ourselves an agenda that doesn't serve the community at large. This is a 10-year project. We can't assume that it's going to be done by December. And for us to assume that it's going to be done by December is to make it a completely different project than it is, in my view, right now. So I guess a couple things. One is I don't think we're done in December, and I don't think we should have a final product in December. I think maybe we should have something to launch the 21 to 23 commission with, but I don't think we should assume that we're done. I think we need to be able to position ourselves to continue this work for another 10 years, 9 years after we're done. And secondly, I think we should look at whether we have actually a structural issue in the way that our terms run in relation to the way council member terms run. We should be I don't see why the SEJC and all of the other advisory bodies can't be a holding place for a new council coming in that may or may not have all of the understanding of and the nuance of the issues that have preceded. So anyway, I've talked enough, and that's what I think.
Commissioner Grossman.
Yeah, I don't see December as the end at all. I really see it as a statement that we would make that would be really a beginning rather than an end. You know, what the recommendations we come up with, the data we provide, that's just a starting point then for the council and for the next commission. But you're right, it is a 10-year product, and there may need to be other interim reports. It's simply to give the new council, you know, a handle on this issue and a way to begin the work. You know, not to finish it at all.
So, I mean, I think you know, I hear two pieces, you know, that are coming out. One of which is a sense of an understanding of the long-term nature of the action, and of the need for embedding processes that are going to long, you know, survive our terms on SEJC, and an understanding of, you know, what's possible in that time frame. But also I hear and share a sense that we do need to make sure that we are doing sufficient work in this fall, that we're leaving the council and the next SEJC with things that are real, meaningful, and in progress in a way that they can be picked up. I think, you know, that it would feel to me like a missed opportunity or a failure on our part if the new group had to kind of come in and start sort of scrambling to figure out, you know, what had been done. So I would personally favor us having something that not complete, not an end process, but that is clear, defined, that includes, you know, our early, you know, preliminary recommendations for council, and includes a clear framework for, you know, things that we are, you know, putting toward the next SEJC, so that this time feels like it's truly building a foundation. You know, to me, the question of how that relates to the survey is really a question that will determine what we do. I think if we want to have our conclusions, our preliminary conclusions shaped by the survey, then, you know, we need the survey responses, at least the first round of survey responses, back in time for, you know, in you know, say, late October to mid-November or something, in time that we could really analyze, make sense of them, write them up for something in December. And that would be one kind of preliminary report. It wouldn't exhaust everything that could be done from it, but it would say that our basis is not just our starting points or our premises, but the survey, and that you know, as one of the bases of it. If we're not going to have the survey reports there, then I think that, you know, in time to do that, then from my mind, the sense of what we're going to produce for December is quite different. In that we might well be producing things that reflect something closer toward, you know, our own sort of subjective judgment of things, which is going to, you know, inevitable anyway. So, you know, I think, you know, to me, that's the time frame. On the sort of tension between those pieces, I lean toward the idea of trying to see if we can get at least preliminary survey information in time that we can use it to strengthen our recommendations in, say, early December, so that they show that they have the basis not just of our thought process and writing and work, but also of this more focused effort to bring in the community.
So can I ask one last question? I know you have several more agenda items, so I don't want to prolong this, but I think, again, the other agenda items are going to go into this conversation, so it may be a little quicker. But I know the conversation is about surveys, but I do want to remind the group that that's one form of qualitative data, and you still have the other work you're doing. You have people that you want to bring to the table. Those are interviews, right? That's data you're going to be collecting. There's also those community listening sessions and dialogues that we haven't rescheduled. I know that was a conversation. You've done one, as an SCJC space, but there's also opportunities to do more so that you can collect more voices through that process, which is what we heard on one of the public comments. So I think there's other ways that you can also collect that data. Because of COVID-19, we have not recommended observations, what we call equity walks, community walks. And there are a lot of different entities where you also can collect data. Because of that, we've really not recommended that now, but that is also a piece of data that will be included as you continue to work towards collecting that information. So I just want to remind you that the surveys is not the end all, but it definitely is a big piece of what you're developing now. So we look forward to give context to for those that were thinking that the next meeting is not till October. Remember, your subcommittee work is the work. So there is work being done in between. And there are meetings to be scheduled, I believe, the week of September 14th through the 18th. Because you invited, we want to invite staff. We're also trying to coordinate staff schedules before we confirm those, which is why you haven't heard back around what that actual date is yet. So I want to remind you, the work is not stopping, and there will be quite a significant amount, I believe, to be done between now and October the 1st. I just want to remind you of that as well. So I'm going to hush because you have other agenda items.
Commissioner Grossman.
Could I suggest that we plan 3 listening sessions, one on each of the areas that we've decided as a focus? That would be something we could schedule real quickly and have one on youth, one on housing, one on policing, and identify who are the appropriate participants in terms of an answer panel. I think we want to make sure that this time when people ask questions, they get answers. And that it's not just listening, but also reacting.
And Chair Downs, I'd just like to clarify, are any of these action items, or are we just discussing for the benefit of deciding what might be a good idea?
So we don't have a motion. I think Ms. Anderson asked for clarification, so if we feel like we need something more formal, but there's not a motion on the floor, and so we have an update. We have her presentation, but also questions for us.
And they're not agendized as action items at this point. Yeah. Okay.
I'm less certain about your last question. So we are on, in terms of what we're on item 6-2 of the agenda.
Possible action. So
yeah, so there's not
our action items. Yeah. We could take action if we want to.
Right.
So I'd like to try a motion then, and I'm coming at this. I'm prefacing this with my strong sense that this work will not be done in December, and we should not target to be done in December. So my motion is that we proceed with our subcommittee work with the goal of having community forums to the most, getting as much involvement as we can, and we make that our priority for December, but that we move a survey, a general public survey, to a time when, and we're gonna pare this down to a time when there's more opportunity to do clipboard and paper surveys on the street, and that we have a better opportunity to involve the public. That would be after December of this year. So let's see, how can I get that into 10 words or less? That the
we might give you 11.
The Social and Economic Justice Commission hereby agrees that we will prioritize public conversations with our subcommittee groups, and that we will move priority to general public survey to 2021, to our first meeting in January of 2021.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. I think the next, everything stops until we have a second. So is there a second for this motion? I think Commissioner Gary, you're seconding it? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So discussion. Commissioner Marks.
I'm not mute, right?
You are not, you're loud and clear.
Finally. Okay, I agree with Bart about having these community listening sessions at as soon as we can. And I like separating each subject matter out so the public can be focused and we can be focused. I also like what Judy's saying, but I feel like we need more input from the public, and I don't see where we're getting that with your proposal. But maybe I've missed it somewhere, Judy. I don't know.
Other questions, Commissioner Grossman?
I think we can do both. I think we can have listening sessions, and in the meantime, we can be working on the design of the survey. And as we do that work, we'll have a better sense of how much time it's going to take. But the survey is also going to give us community input. That's the whole point of it. So I don't see why we couldn't be doing both, and see where we are and what works, rather than deciding that we can't do it. I think we could have data, as part of the presentation that we want to make to the council. I could be wrong about that, though, and we could start out to do it, and we could find that it's going to take longer, and that's what happens when you do surveys. So I suggest we work on it and not decide we can't do it until we see how it goes.
Are you raising your hand, Commissioner Gary? I couldn't tell. No. So I incline to the position I heard Commissioner Grossman state. I'm in favor of looking towards scheduling public hearings or public meetings, question and answer sessions on each of the three topics that we can utilize in helping to formulate our report. But I also think, to me, I favor moving forward on the survey. Both, I think that we can do, both, and, obviously we'll see, where we come out, but I wouldn't want to abandon the belief that we can do both. And in terms, I would like for our report to be able to draw upon. To me, the survey is a key way to get community input. So, I'm, to be able to draw upon that and what we present in December, so that the new council can feel like that they have things that, that they can build upon. Again, we were charged, I'm going to lose track of exactly, but something like in April. I think if we don't have something, that's real and meaningful in December, people are going to be justified in asking, when will we ever? And we can believe that processes are very long and are inevitably going to take a long time, but they also need to go forward. And finally, I have my doubts about when we'll be able to do. I'm certainly no medical expert, but I think if we're deferring, which I think I heard in the motion, and if I misheard, then I apologize. But if we're deferring till we could do a more person-to-person survey, we don't have any idea when that's going to be. I mean, that might not be till 2022. I think, at some point, dealing with the fact that we're in a world that, that we're stuck in this world, and we need to, make the best of it, is to me convincing, given that uncertainty of when we'll actually be able to do pen and clipboard person-to-person surveys again.
Okay.
Commissioner Marks.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just think that input from the public could really inform what's on the survey. Maybe we're going to be asking questions in a direction that the public doesn't even give a crap about. If we had input from them on each of these subject areas, I think it could help us do a better survey for the public. But I can give it up.
Certainly, it's an important point. To me, if we design a survey that's open-ended enough that the public can comment on it, then the survey gives us the opportunity for deeper public input. I agree, if we ask only narrow questions that seem to push in a direction, then people will understandably and rightfully resist that. But if we do include, as I think we have the capacity to, open-ended questions, and the survey can be a mechanism for bringing in, a public sense of where they are and what different members of the public want. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. We had discussion. Do we want to go ahead toward a vote? Do we have any,
I think I want to add a comment here. My original motion was an effort to capture my sense that the commission felt like the work couldn't be done by the end of this year. And my willingness to acknowledge that I don't think we should think this work is going to be done by the end of this year. Whether or not we can accomplish a full survey remains to be seen. And I think it's our own fear of failure that we will come to December and have a public that's incensed that we haven't produced a final product that we need to grapple with. We won't have produced a final product in December. And if the public is expecting that, we failed to communicate with the public what we're trying to do. So I'm willing to vote against my own motion or rescind it at this point. But I want to just acknowledge that you guys, all of us, need to know that we're not going to be done in December, and we're not going to have a final product that we're going to be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we did it. It's going to take longer than that. So until we're all comfortable with that, I think we need to be careful about what we say we're going to try to do. Help me out here with rules of order. Can I rescind my own motion?
I believe you can.
I hereby rescind my motion.
Okay. All right. Okay, so unless there's another motion, then we can conclude our discussion of this topic. All right. Okay, so thank you. So yes, Commissioner Grossman.
I don't want to leave the idea of the 3 listening sessions hanging in the air. I don't think we need a motion, but who's gonna make that happen?
All right. Would it be good to have a motion to reflect that that's our will?
Well, I guess that way it'll be in the minutes, right?
Okay.
So let me move that we have 3 listening sessions, 1 devoted to each of the subcommittee areas.
I second.
Okay, so it's been seconded. Discussion. I see Commissioner Marks.
I just want to clarify, there's 4 subcommittees.
There's 4,
right?
I'm sorry. There's
3.
3.
Well, there's the economic development, there's the schools and youth, there's the police, and there's the housing.
Housing
right?
and the economic are one group.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay,
we can
that's
defer.
one.
I think it's
Okay,
Commissioner. I think it's Commissioner Gary and Commissioner Kerr. We can defer to their judgment. They did have separate notes.
Right, that's why
but my
I was-
perception is they've been one committee that submitted 2 different set of notes. But if Commissioner Kerr and Gary see it differently, then I'll certainly defer to that.
Okay, that's fine with me. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any
You
further
want to have the
discussion?
public input? Sorry.
Do we need public input on we've had public input on this topic. We're not on a new topic, Margie. So I think we can, do we have any further discussion? All right, in that case, why don't we go ahead and vote? So the vote is that the commission's will is to have public meetings on each of the 3 topics, encompass separate ones on each of the 3 topics encompassed in the subcommittees. Does that capture it properly, Commissioner Grossman? All right.
As soon as possible, I would add.
As soon as possible. Commissioner Grossman?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. All right, I think that's a good plan. So now we move to 6-3. 6-3 again on the equity statement. Nicole Anderson and Associates, Dr. Holt, will lead the commission in a discussion to begin to identify the elements of an equity statement. Are you ready for that, Nicole? And so I think, again, you all make a presentation. We'll then have initial rounds of questions, comments, public, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, and just a quick time check, because I think these 2 next items kind of flow together, so we want to try to honor time. Is there a time check that's needed
We're over time.
Yeah, we do need a motion to extend the meeting.
Okay, so do we have a motion to extend the meeting?
I move to extend to 11 o'clock.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Discussion?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll take a vote. Commissioner Kerr? Commissioner Grossman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. All right. We're ready when you are.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen again just to give a visual of the slide we shared at your last meeting, just to give you a little context of this equity statement piece. And again, it really flows into the other item as well in terms of the action plan. So I know we're on two different items, but I just want to give you a little context and so we can kind of fast forward. So remember you saw this slide before and we gave you kind of a big picture about at the end of this work of planning, you want to have this racial equity impact plan. And we gave you some like big bullets in terms of components that you are actually working on as we speak. So you're building your plan as we speak. And one of those big components was not only unpacking the history, the background, which is part of your collection of this data, but you're also really creating like, what is equity, right? Like, what is that statement? So there's common language. And when we say racial equity in particular, what does that mean? So what we need from you all is to really help us with this piece of your building of your action plan. And so when we talk about what this language is about, I would suspect each of you have your own kind of lens on what racial equity work is about. And I want to clarify again, that the context of this was around institutional racism. So I want to make sure I'm clear that it wasn't just about equity, but about racial equity. And I want to make sure that we're still all on the same page, because I know that sometimes we'll kind of back up and say equity, and equity is really about giving people what they need. And that depends on those different people, right? But when we say racial equity, it's really around the context of race, ethnicity, and we need to unpack those words, right? We need to make sure those words are very clear. So part of what I want to do as quickly as I can is make sure I give a little context and allow you all to have some discussion to really help us collectively as SEJC start to contribute to that definition of racial equity. And then of course, your subcommittee time is where we'll continue to roll up our sleeves. I don't want you to feel like you have to do it all tonight. As a matter of fact, I don't want you to think that, because the bottom line is you're tired. So we want to have your best thinking typically when we're in our space of subcommittee time. So on the screen, just to give a little context, again, I kind of remind you earlier, there's a lot of energy to do this work. And there is a space where we have to recognize why it's important to identify what racial equity is. If we're going to use this term, we're going to focus on that being our North Star to close the racial equity gaps that we see in Albany. And obviously you've started to narrow the focus down into housing, to education, to policing, and to business community development. And so when we think about, again, the context of it, we have to understand the institutional racism, the context, so that when you create your definition, you really have a lens and a common language around what you are focused on as a group. And I don't want us to lose that essence. So when you think this image here just reminds us of the times we're in right now, right? And obviously there's a huge movement around Black Lives Matter. There's a huge movement around this context of social justice and racial equity, and really addressing all the spaces of institutional oppression. But I also want to remind us too that as we develop this and start to unpack our lens, that everyone is not a believer in this work, and that there is quite a bit of rage and anger. And you all heard public comment about vandalism, and there's so many other incidents I'm sure we could report as we speak. So I want to just give that context, because as you develop your definition, you are really developing the lens by which you want to see Albany be in 10 years. But understanding that once you develop that, you have to also start to recognize what are the barriers to it, and then how are you going to respond to ensure that racial equity actually happens in Albany. Okay, so I just want to give you that layer, because this work is really tough, but without having common language, it'll be really hard for us to respond to the work. And it'll be really hard for us to recognize what is happening. So just giving you a little context. So a couple of definitions, just to start to like think about, okay, what does this actually mean? And I hope you can see that. That looks really light. Can you see that okay? Sorry about that. I didn't pick the best color, huh? At 10 o'clock at night, I apologize. Just giving you a little context about unpacking racism and understanding that there's kind of three things we want you to be thinking about as you come up with your statement. And so the definition of race, making sure as a group we still continue to unpack in our conversations that race literally is a social construct. Let me see if I can blow it up for you. I don't know if I can blow it up without cutting it off, but this is an example of a definition of race, right? And understanding that when we start to have these conversations and call out groups based on race, that it's really based on a social construct that was developed to divide people. And so we want to remember that those are based on characteristics. You all kind of know the context of it. Skin tone came up a couple times. There's all these different ways to divide people based on this mental and social construct, when actually people really have more in common than not. When we start to break down their ethnicity and we start to break down their nationality and their DNA, okay? And so you got to remember that the concept of race is something we're going to have to unpack. And I always push people to think about, maybe, are we using the correct word when we try to identify people based on census data, right? Based on those boxes we force people to mark. Or are we talking about people's identity, right? Their culture and their ethnicity. And this is something that we have to unpack as a group, is what are we really talking about? Do we want to continue to even use the word race, which is a use used to divide people, versus identify people based on what they want to self-identify as? And so that's going to be the harder work that comes up even in those surveys. When we start to talk about the groups we want to engage in these conversations, are we identifying them based on the boxes that are marked in the census, which have history to them? Or do we want to actually help them get their input based on their particular cultural identity, and again, ethnicity? And so as you continue to look at the different definitions, moving into racism itself, and thinking about the system, right, that exists around those policies that really keep what we call that supremacy of one race over another, that advantages one over another. And it's important that we continue to call those things out as you come up with your definition as a commission. Because again, this is your thinking around, if we're going to combat racism, we have to recognize what it is. Again, it is a system that holds and maintains institutional power based on those boxes, again, we mark. And so typically when we hear the word people of color versus people mark the box white, that's typically where you hear that conversation. When you hear people talk about maintaining white supremacy, it's talking about power. It's talking about a structure. And so when we look at how do we separate people, then we see those conversations about how race often correlates with economic status, right? And so again, power, whether it's political power, positional power, cultural power, those are all things that keep this concept of dividing people and maintaining oppression. So that's the concept of racism. When we talk about institutional racism, okay, this is the word that has come up when we were brought in, is we want to address institutional racism in Albany, and literally remembering that institutional racism speaks beyond just those individual incidents like that vandalism moment, right? Those are individual incidents based on racism being carried out, but institutional is where those practices and policies continuously perpetuate the disadvantage of groups of people based on, again, that box they mark based on race. And so it's important that we be comfortable as a commission to continue to call that out. And you all have really been doing a great job of that. But I also want to remind you that this work, as you start to develop your own definition, having this context is really important about recognizing the different constructs. And I want to remind you too, there are different ways to define it. Obviously, these are examples of how it's defined. You can wordsmith it and really look at different ways to construct the definitions. But I want you to just be clear about just the basic premise of understanding the differences around unpacking this concept of race. And of course, here's a definition. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Okay, and as you think about these examples, and I want to go into discussion about what SEJC really wants to weigh in on, how do we start this conversation about what racial equity is. And so this particular definition, again, it's tiny, so I apologize, but racial equity referring to what is genuinely non-racist society. And a lot of you have heard the words anti-racist practices. You've heard the words, really trying to address those institutional spaces where some have been benefiting and some have been burdened by the aspects of race. And so looking at this definition is one example. And notice again, it's calling out people of color. It's calling out the fact that racial equity is about interrupting really those that are impacted by being people of color who may live in poverty, be in prison, drop out of high school, and it starts to name some of those things that you actually can measure when you say racial equity gaps have closed. Okay, so that's what I love about thinking about how do you define it, is you're really calling out what it looks like, and it should show how you can measure that that is happening. Because in 10 years, we want to see how our racial equity gaps close. Okay, so I just want to pause for a minute just to give you a little context, and if there's any questions or thoughts or discussion before I give you a couple of examples, and I want to hear, you know, SEJC really kind of have a discussion and give us as consultants and yourselves really an idea of what is our definition of racial equity, because we keep saying these words, and we really want to have a real understanding. So thoughts, questions, or do you want me to keep going and then you have your larger discussion? Keep going? All right, perfect. You're like, it's 10 o'clock, Nicole, keep going. All right, so I want to remind you as we get ready to go into this process, the Elephant and the Blind Man poem. I believe that was shared with you the first meeting, maybe the second, I lose track. But again, this is just a reminder of the process that you all are going to be going through, not just tonight, but continuously, even with the community. And I want to give context to this because the poem really speaks about the fact that there are these 6 blind men that are touching on this elephant, and they're all arguing about what the elephant is. None of them are saying it's the elephant. They're all saying it's a different part of the elephant, right? The fan, the ear is a fan, and the tail is a rope. And so they all have these different perceptions, which there's value and beauty in that, but they all are missing it that it's an elephant. And so what I want to make sure is as you get ready to define racial equity, that you still call out the elephant and understand that sometimes what will happen is that elephant may have different aspects to it. And we know that when we talk about race, that when people mark those boxes around race and ethnicity, that they're not monolithic, that they all have different experiences. And so as we talk about racial equity, we have to have that lens in mind, that because for an example, I mark the box African American, my family does, but that we don't all have the same needs. And so it's important that as you craft your definition, that you really have this in mind, that there are multiple layers to what this looks like, but you have to call it out in terms of the fact that it's still an elephant. And so we still have to stay in the conversation about race. What's going to happen as you continue to do your work is you're going to have people who are going to see this differently. And so you're going to have people that will want to call out things that are what I call not plain racial, what we call oppression Olympics, right? I mentioned that one of our first sessions. We don't want to play oppression Olympics. We want to recognize that everyone has been harmed by racism, that oppression is very real, and that people who have a disability, people who speak a language other than English, people who have different aspects of their kind of identity, all have been oppressed in some way. But if you're going to call out racial equity, you're going to have to call it out. And you're going to have to be comfortable with staying in that conversation when many people may want to layer back. And I call it water down the conversation and not call out it's an elephant still. And that's going to be the discomfort of the work of SEJC, is that you're going to have to really wrestle with how do we stay in the space of talking about what racial equity is. Okay, so I just want to remind you, because this process is going to be happening as you bring the community in. You all are going to start to begin this conversation about what the definition is, but your community also needs to be a part of this conversation. So every time you have those community forums, every time you come together in any space, even with those surveys, we have to make sure that the community is all weighing in on what racial equity actually means. And that's going to be very informative for you. So I'm going to share 2 examples, and then I want to open up for conversation. Again, these are simply examples. This one is adapted by the National Equity Project. And in particular, this one really calls out what I love about it is the ability to interrupt the predictability of someone's success or failure, or someone's opportunity or being marginalized or oppressed. It really calls out that interruption. So I'm gonna let you just read for a second. I'm gonna hush and let you read it. And then I'm gonna give you one more example. And then I want you all to join in this conversation. And Dr. Shelley and I are just gonna be taking notes and just kind of hearing your input. There's no finalization tonight. It's just weighing in so we can start to craft a statement as a group. So this is one example. Just give me a wave once you've read through it. I don't want to rush you through, but just give me a wave once you've read through it. All right, looks like you got everyone read through. All right, and I can come back to if you need to. Okay, and here's one other one. And again, this is a sample, literally a sample.
That's something else.
All right, so as you've read through both of those, I do want to open it up to hear your discussion amongst yourselves. Obviously, if you have questions for us, great, but I really want to hear kind of where you're leaning towards, how you define this word called racial equity, because this is going to really help, again, drive the work around what is your lens in 2030? What does it look like when this work is done? And I hate using the word done. In 2030, what does it look like? And how have we kind of gotten to, how we really looked at this as a metric from 10 years from now? So I want you to think of it in that way. This is like the lens that you apply to the work around housing, around education, around policing, around business community development. Okay, and again, these are 2 examples. Actually, you saw 3 examples. Okay. So I want to pause and just pass the virtual mic back over to Chair Downs. And I'm not sure, Dr. Shelley, I didn't ask you if you wanted to add anything to that, but wanted to allow them to have their discussion. So I didn't want to cut you off. Okay. All right. So Chair Downs, if you want to take it from here, we just want to hear the discussion and where you all kind of are landing on what is racial equity.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Appreciate the models, which are always helpful. And, look forward to, I think, we could do initial questions and discussion, initial round of discussion. We'll want to take in public comment before we complete our discussion. So any initial questions, discussion, Commissioner Marks and Commissioner Gary.
Would you like me to stop sharing, by the way? Or leave it up? Just want to make sure.
I'm not.
I don't need it anymore.
You're okay with leaving it up? Okay.
Okay, so what I am thinking about when we're looking at the whole Albany community and how we want, like Nicole was just saying, we want to have an agreement from the whole community on what a racial equity statement looks like. And I feel like a lot in dealing with racism, a lot of the problem is education. I mean, I think that if Americans were more educated about how much wealth had been stolen from Black people or how they had been denied building wealth, everyone would be in favor of reparations. I bring that up because in the statement, it says, talks about redistribution of wealth. And I can see some Albany residents like going to the roof when they see that. Although I see it as reparations, and other cities themselves have done reparations take a lot of different ways. But anyway, that's just, I feel like we need to do education and more education in the community around racism and issues of racism. And that would be helpful to get people to come together to agree on a statement. Okay, I'm finished.
And then Commissioner Gary, I think you had been.
Sorry about that. Yes, I think Margie and I were on the same page. First, I want to thank Nicole for spelling it out, because I think the community has the wrong definition of what racism is. It's not just Black against white, right? And I think that's when you first hollow out the word racism or you're racist, that's the first thing people go to is, I don't like the Black person or I don't like the white person. So spelling it out is truly key in order for us to put a statement together. We want to make sure that, it's understood that it's not black and white, that it's one being doesn't have to live up to the same standards as the other, that they're being treated differently than another. So just like Margie said, when you talk about wealth, redistribution of wealth, when you're talking about, clubs, organizations, taking a stance to push others out that don't look or speak their same lingo. We really need to think about how we want to structure it where everyone is included, not just because of, their color, gender. Everyone needs to be included. So I appreciate the fact that we have everything spelled out, and hopefully it'll help us to get the statement exactly where it needs to be with the help with the community as well. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Other commissioners want to be heard, initial questions and comments before we go to the public. Commissioner Grossman.
I think there are three elements that I see in different proportions in the various different statements, but it seems like one has to do with removing of barriers to what I would say is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for particular groups of people based on their race. In other words, getting rid of institutional racism and the structures that support it. Then I think that there should be one on compensation for past oppression, so that we bring people to the same starting line. And then I think the third one, which doesn't come up much, is the encouragement of positive interactions and cultural sharing between different groups of people. So those would be the three elements of a definition. Maybe not quite those words, but those elements.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this too much, but the thing that struck me the most in the presentation is we're still needing to be sure that we call the elephant. And I think if we try to be inclusive of people with disabilities and LGBTQ plus people and everything else, we're gonna miss the issue, which is racism. And the equity statement that appeals to me the most is the one from the National Equity Project. It calls out, I think, what are the key elements. And I think when Bart is talking about three things, I almost see the things that you mentioned, Bart, in the three bullets that are here. So I'm not suggesting that we move ahead on any statement at this point, but I do think that I don't think I'm ready as an individual to really try to make an equity statement on racism that includes everybody and doesn't say racist, doesn't call out race as part of its element. So that's all.
I think those comments really, well spoken. I agree that I think on my initial, look, I both agree that it probably makes sense for us to sit with this a little bit, but also that on my first look, the one from the National Equity Project strikes me as, especially helpful. The one piece that I'd be interested in putting in, and I know it sounds like special pleading, but is a reference, even a brief one, to history. I'm not saying, I know there's a separate history section, but that the need for the need for directly addressing, systemic racism and for addressing racial inequity is steeped in structures that come out of history, including that, and I think it's useful for a town or anybody to recognize, even if it's briefly and generally, its history. So recognizing the way that Albany was constructed through systems of exclusion rooted in housing, in federally backed mortgages, and, other practices, whatever we want to say, that we are compelled by that sense of history to do the three things that I think, it seems like we all agree upon. So I think this is good. Are we ready to take public comment on this? And it would help, I think, if we stopped sharing screen at this point, just to, if that's okay. Thank you. All right, so members of the public who'd like to be heard, again, this is on item, I know we're doing a lot, this is on item 6-3, which is the elements of an equity statement. So Jeremiah Penguelo, I think the city clerk has moved you on.
Hi, thank you. I just want to raise one more point of interest. I've said it before. I don't see how we're going to get past this racial equity and all this stuff until Zoom doesn't make you pick a reaction by a skin tone. Right? I don't know if you guys have even looked this up yet since I mentioned it earlier in the meeting. But that's what's wrong in the world. I mean, I don't even know if it is wrong. Maybe it's good to have people identify themselves by a skin tone. I don't know. I don't know what's right or what's wrong in this world. I really don't. I just would try to avoid it altogether. Just not have to pick a skin tone to be on Zoom. There's a lot of different ethnicities. When I was at Albany High School, the best day of the year was International Food Day. I'll tell you that much. International Food Day was the best day of the year. We had everybody cooking food from all over the world: Persian food, Indian food, Latin food, African food. It was so good, and everybody was together. And that's what we need: more international food days, and bring cultures together instead of keeping everybody separate because we're not educated on everybody's culture. And you're right, it is about education, because you don't know what's going on the other side of the world, or about a culture that doesn't have food. So yeah, so we could do this, but to tell you the truth, a 10-year plan, common sense, does not make sense. So your goal is by 2030 to finally figure out how to police racism in America? We need a 1-year plan. Forget this 10-year plan. Who thought of a 10-year plan? Really? 10 years? We got to take action in the moment now. People are getting shot by the police now. We can't wait 10 years to have meetings for 10 years. Okay? We got to take action in the moment. We got to have goals. They're called goals. Let's set a 1-month goal. Something so easy we could accomplish, but at least we accomplished it. Like, let's just set a goal to have a meeting. Okay, we had the meeting, we accomplished a goal. But this 10-year plan is too long, everybody. Common sense. We need to figure this stuff out now. 1 year at the latest. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Corey Dosty, you're next, and I think the city clerk is moving you in, and you should be on.
Hey, folks. I mostly want to say that I don't think this was said in the way it was meant, but what I wrote down in my notes was trying to be inclusive of people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus people, means we'll miss the issue, which is racism. And while I agree that racism is the priority, and that is like the equity thing, and we do need to continually name that this is about racial equity, I just want to lift up that people of color are also disabled and are also LGBTQ plus, and that compounds in ways that wouldn't be fixed just by addressing racial equity. So I think there is room for it to be percolating. It doesn't have to be at the forefront. I agree with that. And that it definitely, this is about racial equity, and especially about anti-Blackness. And that needs to be named, right? Not just saying people of color all the time, but specifically saying Black people and Indigenous people. But yeah, Black trans women get way worse outcomes than cis Black men or cis Black women in a lot of fields, especially around incarceration and around being murdered. And it's just not studied that much. So yeah, I just really encourage you to not say that it's not relevant and that it's a distraction, because I think that it's a solidarity issue and it's not the main focus. Yes, and we do need to stay on the main focus. We need to continue to say that race is the main focus. But the intersectionality means you can't just actually separate race out altogether, that it's still going to be, that these pieces inform each other, and that it is a compounding effect. And yeah, that addressing race won't free a Black trans woman of the compounded effects. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so further discussion by the commission. Mr. Grossman. I think you might be muted, Bart.
I was just going to say, I think this was a good beginning. We have a lot more to do, but I have a feeling now is not a good time to try to push it further. I think we're all too tired to give it the kind of attention it really needs. So I'd rather say let's pause and continue at another time.
I would second that, Commissioner Jarrett. I think, I know for me, I won't be able to really dive in and give 100% on it, and it needs 100% because we want it to be clear, we want it to be concise, and we want it to be strong. And I think if we can, maybe set up a meeting, I guess in another week or so, to kind of just focus on putting this together, so we can at least have something for council recommendation or whatever, I think that would be good. So I'm in agreement if we can just put this into another meeting soon.
Commissioner Marks.
I just have a request of Nicole. So you'll send those out to us, Nicole?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I sure will. I'll make sure you have them, and we'll clean them up a little bit so it's easier to get them all in one document. So no worries.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly clarify my comments earlier, because I from public comment, I think there was, I misspoke or didn't speak as clearly as I had intended to. My point is that while I totally understand the concept of intersectionality and do understand why one lifts the other, I think we need to be very careful in the community that we have today, that we're living in, that we don't let that concept get in the way of the primary moving factor here. And that was the point I was making. So I hope that's clearer than I was previously. I apologize for not being clear.
Thank you. So I think just trying to square, I think there's consensus that we, take this under advisement. I think, I also heard some people saying that they would like faster movement. The only way I know not in this meeting, but before our October meeting, or so, is that a suggestion that we have a subcommittee on trying to draft a equity action statement with the consultants to bring to us as a resolution for our October meeting? Because to me, that's the interim between, if we don't want to do it today, which I support, but we also don't want to start afresh in October, then we would need to have somebody that can be working on it between now and then. Nicole. Ms.
Yeah,
Anderson.
just to respond to that, one of the things that I mentioned in the beginning is that your subcommittee time is where that was on your agenda. So we'll continue to use your subcommittee time so you can have more time to unpack it. You have thinking that's during the daytime and not at 10 o'clock at night. So I think you want to capitalize on the time you have together. And then if you have any community listening session between now and your next meeting, that will also be a space to get input from others about what does racial equity mean. That's going to be a big part of it. But we wanted to give you sacred time as the commission that's going to be developing this plan, which includes the statement that you have time to wrestle with it as a commission, because it's important your perspective be a part of this. So I'm not disrespecting anyone in the community. It's about, this is your work too. And so we want to make sure we gather your thoughts. So your subcommittee time will be, that will be part of the agenda that we wanted to include, if that's okay with you all.
And so just making sure I understand that you're saying it could be on the subcommittee agendas for each of the existing subcommittees.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And to continue, when you meet with staff, right, you're going to have these same this discussion continues beyond, right? So it's getting a lot of input so that the definition or that statement becomes something that gets perspective from everyone who's engaging in this work. So I do want to say that anytime we meet, this conversation should continue to come back up, right? Of how are we building on our racial equity statement? So you will have a draft that will happen, is what I want to call it. It doesn't have to be complete. I don't see it being complete. It's not intended to be complete until further down this year, right? When you get that input from your community. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that, so you all don't feel rushed to make this happen right now. But we just want to have that conversation continue. So hopefully that helps.
Does that mechanism of working through the existing, of it coming up in the discussions and the meetings of the existing subcommittees work for people? It appears so. If anybody, if I'm misreading anybody, please speak up. I think another thing, I appreciated these models also. I think it might be helpful if there are models that cities as a particular form of governance use that you especially think are, valuable for us. I think that would also be something helpful. So great. So I think that concludes this agenda item, unless there's something that I'm missing. And that takes us to agenda item 6-4, which also on the equity impact plan. The commission will discuss the elements to include in the update to council, tentatively scheduled for September 21st. So what do we want to have in hand here? And Nicole, did you want to be heard at the start on this, or is this for us to, is the ball in our court here, as you see it?
I think that I've dribbled the ball enough and that it's in your court, but I will say this, the last two items really spoke to this. So I don't know if you need to belabor this particular one. I think we've set the tone for that. So again, what did alarm me is, not alarm, but what is clarifying what does September 21st look like? Because that's that kind of, update to city council. So I think you had conversations about kind of this conversation of, an update, which I think we just want to clarify maybe in our subcommittee time together, that week of the 14th through the 18th, I think will be helpful so that you have a good update for the 21st. So that would be the main thing I would contribute. And again, you're still building the plan, like you're building it literally. So you'll have, I think, a really solid update for them once we meet again.
Thank you. So, so any preliminary comments or questions on aspects of, of our update that we'll want to give to council on September 21st at that council meeting? So updates from the subcommittees, as Ms. Anderson and Dr. Holt suggested. Is there anything else that you want a preliminary comment or question about that topic before we go to the public?
Just a real quick one. I'm looking forward to the work on this in the subcommittee, and I'm hoping that there will be enough time to digest the work before we have to present to. I'm not sure how tight the time frame is that week, but if we can have the meetings early in the week as opposed to late in the week, I think it'll make a difference for us. Thanks.
Yes, that's a good comment. Thank you. Anything else before we go to the public? Okay, not seen. I think if you members of the public would like to be heard on this topic, which is again agenda item 6-4 on the Commission's plans for its update to council on the September 21st meeting. Jeremiah Penguelo, I see your hand up, and the city clerk will move you in. Let's see. I think the city clerk is going to move Jeremiah in, but you're not in quite yet. So we haven't forgotten about you. Here you come. And you should be on. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. You're so nice to me. 6.4, and mine says equity impact plan update to council. Oh yeah, tentatively discuss scheduled September 21st. So yeah, at least we're going to meet again this month. So that's all I have to say for that. Thank you.
Thank you. There's anyone not seeing other public comment on this, we can come back to the commission just for clarification. Our update to the council on September 21st will be at a council meeting, which is of course a public meeting where commissioners will, I hope, be ready to speak to council about it. Not a meeting of the SEJC on September 21st because the council meeting scheduled for then. So further discussion by the commissioners.
Is it possible to please remind the police chief to attend that meeting, to please invite him kindly? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any further discussion by the commission? No. Okay. All right. Does this give you enough to work with, Ms. Anderson and Dr. Holt, in terms of the meetings for? I've lost track of the weeks, but the week after next, I guess, is I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay.
Yes,
Sure.
and we again are wanting to make sure the staff is available. So that's part of the delay,
Sure.
again, to confirm those, because the staff is important to make each of those meetings. So that's why we're trying to just coordinate that. So we should know pretty soon. But again, just carving out that week is why we chose that. So
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate all your work. I know it's a lot, especially in this phase where there's a lot of work to keep a lot of things up in the air and make sure that they're moving. So we really do appreciate all of your work to keep all that going, especially in August. So we really appreciate all of that and look forward to more ahead. Our next agenda item is item 6-5 on communication and outreach. And here we'll discuss a topic that's been raised in prior meetings about outreach and communication for meetings, including distribution of minutes, for which there's a hyperlink to a resolution passed by council in 2014 about the move toward action minutes. And the other thing I think embedded in this from prior comments was also about forms of outreach about when meetings are taking place and how we communicate with people. So preliminary questions and comments on this. It's Commissioner Gary.
I just had a quick question. I know we had Commissioner Grossman and Commissioner Marks answer questions to the public. I was wondering, can we get an update on that, or should that be on the next agenda? I think we should continue to follow up on that just to make sure that the public questions are being answered.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, Commissioner Grossman?
I think Sid probably is in the best position to give us an update on where we are in getting those questions up on the website.
Yeah, we are still working on getting those questions. I have received them from the chief of police, and then I've submitted the neighborhood services ones as well, but waiting on others, and we should have those up on the website. We're hoping by mid-September, but for sure before your next meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other comments or questions before we go to the public on the issue of public outreach and communication? Commissioner Marks. I think you're muted, Margie. Still muted. There you go.
Okay. We're looking at this resolution that was passed by the city council that says that you can only, move from summary to action minutes, right? And so we're using this to say that we can't do more enhanced minutes. I just want to, is that what the city's trying to say with this? I'm not sure what the point of this is.
Action minutes are an action of the city council by resolution. So if you wanted to change action minutes to summary minutes or any other types of minutes, you would have to make the request to the city council.
Okay, because that's what the public was requesting.
Yes, but the action needs to come from the council.
Commissioner
Right, I
Gross.
understand.
I don't think, I mean, we can have action minutes, but we could also have a summary of discussion, perhaps as a separate document that we could do for ourselves. It seems to me that, I mean, if you did just action minutes on this meeting, you would wind up saying that we took one action, which was to pass a motion requiring listening sessions, and everything else we've discussed would not be available, except that it is available via the video. Now, some people have said the video, listening to the whole video is a big problem. And perhaps we could have transcripts or something like that. But I think given the kind of work that we're doing, and other commissions at other times do this kind of work too, where a lot of it is about discussion and delving into issues and getting public input, the action minutes simply are not adequate to capture what people need to understand and make it look like nothing happened. So maybe an additional document so that there's nothing wrong with having the action minutes. It's easier for council, I think, and it's less burdensome on staff. But we also perhaps for this kind of work, we need some kind of a summary, which is a different document.
Other preliminary questions or comments? Commissioner Kerr.
I don't disagree with Commissioner Marks or Commissioner Grossman, but I do want to reflect on the fact that part of the issue is that we don't have any kind of journalism in the city at all. And there are so few people writing what's happening on any of the social media websites, and that's not even reaching everybody. So I think one of the things that I hear in what the community wants and what my fellow commissioners want is some sort of public forum, which is really not minutes. It's social commentary and it's journalism. That's my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Gary.
Yes, and I also I know I was the one who championed this to be on our agenda, and it's simply because just like one of the, I think it was Julie who mentioned that the kiosk that's by, where's that kiosk at? By Orange, it's in front of Orange Theory Fitness. And she's absolutely right. The agenda, everything was so small compared to other items that was in that kiosk. So, I mean, we definitely want to make sure that people see that we're actually having this conversation. And, what other places can we market these types of meetings so people in the community who don't have access to internet, who don't have access to social media, is able to go outside their doors on their walks and say, oh, hey, there's a meeting about, racial equity on such and such date. How can we get this information out to those who don't have the means like we do to be on the internet and receive it? And definitely putting it in small print. I mean, I barely knew it was there, and absolutely right. The next advertisement was big, bold, and it was in there. So how can we make it more visible to the community? That's all my comment.
Yeah. Right. So we have two aspects of this that we're talking about, and we'll go to the public in just a second, but just for clarity, one of which is about how we get the word out. Can we, and I do appreciate the effort to include the kiosk, which is, a gain in this, in this time. But are there ways of doing that, even just magnifying the font of the announcement or somehow highlighting? I understand the need to disclose all the things we need to disclose about a public meeting, but of highlighting it's happening. in a way that allows people to see that easily. And then the second is about communicating afterward about what happened at the meeting. So those are the two things that we've got on the table on this question of communication and outreach. Let's take public comment and then come back for any
Can I
further
just
motion. Yes, Commissioner Marks.
I just want to add one thing. I know that the city does know how to do those kind of flyers because they've done them in the past for the SEJC meetings. It was a very nice flyer just about that meeting. And it was, 8.5 by 11, so it was a good size. And we were able to pass it out to people or put it in storefronts and that kind of thing. So the city knows how to make that kind of flyer. So that's what we need.
Thank you. Let's go to the public, and then we'll come back and see if we have any motions or further discussion. So, I see two members of the public with hands raised. Jeremiah Penguelo, the clerk, has brought you in, and you're here. You're on.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'm right now on Solano Avenue in Cornell. All these big bellies, they're blank. They just got white pieces of paper. There's no advertisement. Oh, this side. Natural healing, safe medical marijuana. Whoa, there's a yogurt shop right here with kids around, but yet you got this advertising for medical with the word marijuana. I don't know about that. Over here in front of the post office would be a great place to display a sign. I love the fact that all these meetings are on Zoom. It's so easy for me to attend. I could be at work. I could be anywhere. I'm able to attend more meetings now because I don't have to go physically to the city hall. So that's justice for a voice in the world. But all these big bellies they're all blank. Over here in front of Tata Cafe, this big belly, okay, this one's blank. But this could be saying, we have a public meeting, put your interest here. We want your opinion. Write the Zoom ID number down. Let the public know, because this is a high traffic crosswalk right here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 big bellies right here on Cornell, right where the main post office thing is in front of Tata Cafe. And all these people could be seeing this stuff. So we have these things here. We already paid for it. We got these big bellies. We're just not using them. I mean, you want to just give me the key and I'll just put something in here? I mean, is it that easy? I mean, I could print out a sign. Just let me know what I can do to help, okay? Because we don't need to figure it out. It's already figured out. We're just not using it. Remember, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Well, we already built it. We just need to show up and put the sign where it belongs. I get notices. I subscribe to YouTube, and that's one great thing that I am aware of these things. I put it in my Google Calendar. I set my schedule so I have an alarm. But maybe people can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let everybody know to subscribe to the Albany Meetings YouTube. That way, everybody gets an email link. When they're in the middle of their day, their phone starts ringing. Oh, it's time for a meeting, because people just forget. So we just need to be simply reminded. I like being reminded. So these big bellies are here. We could put flyers on every single light pole. I'm looking at these light poles. We could put a flyer on every light pole, and you just can't miss it here on Solano and also San Pablo. I know the Albany Library's community center is closed, but the post office is open, and it kind of seems to be a hub. Also at the city hall, we have big bellies at the city hall. Maybe open up a positive suggestion box. There we go. Just a positive suggestion box. Anybody could drop it off. Thanks.
Thank you. Next public comment is Corey Dosty, and I believe that the city clerk is moving you in, and you're on.
Hello. So the thing about an alternate document and about commissioner made notes, I assumed that was not something legally viable. I would be interested in hearing from the city council about, can you share personal notes as a commissioner? Is that some kind of bias? Is that a conflict of interest in some way? I had assumed that was why it wasn't happening. It's fine if it's more because you're tired or haven't thought to do so before, but I'm interested in that if that's an obstacle, and I think that would need to be cleared up. Super agree about journalism. I'm trying to do all of my stuff. I'm not great about wanting to promote it because tired. I'm very tired. And then the transcript stuff. So someone said that YouTube, I believe Susan Moffat has been saying, and she's been out, but she'll be back in like a month, has been saying that YouTube does automated transcript output. I know that Zoom does, but only if you're recording to the Zoom cloud and have that setting turned on. But the useful thing about automated transcripts is they will give you the ability to search for keywords associated to time codes. And then you can more easily find the section of the video that you want to look at. So another way to make things more accessible is the time codes of the video when different parts of the agenda happen, which is, I'm not sure how easy that is to program in or to make notes about in the thing, and it's all figuring out stuff work. But the automated thing, you know, it's automated, so turning that on in some way would be really cool and would be really helpful, although not a replacement for journalism. And yes, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so back to the commission. That concludes the public comment on this section. Commission, is there anything that you would like, are there further comments on this topic? Commissioner Grossman.
I'm just looking at everybody, and everybody looks the way I feel, quite exhausted, and I'm not feeling terribly creative right now myself. I don't know if other people are, but maybe what would be good is to table this discussion and pick it up at our next meeting when we have a bit more energy. And it would also be good in support of that if we could find out, for example, what do some of our neighboring cities do in terms of disseminating the outcomes of meetings.
Thank you. I'm fine with that, and it appears that you know, I'm not seeing motions from anybody else. If we can think about how to, within the confines of what's permissible, to increase, if nothing else, the font of what we use to put on the kiosk to make it more visible as people pass by what they'd be stopping to look at. I think that would alone be a great first step in terms of making the announcements visible to people. So this moves us to 6-6 on mental health services. Commission will discuss a recommendation to council regarding recent changes to mental health services. This comes out of a discussion, an announcement at our last meeting about a change in Berkeley's relationship to the county and their understanding of Albany's role. We have a letter there, and I'm not sure, is that a letter submitted by the mayor, or is that a letter submitted by one of us for our consideration to recommend to the council and mayor? Commissioner Grossman.
Yes, Commissioner Kerr and I wrote a letter to the council, and this letter, I think, is a letter from the mayor to the Board of Supervisors,
Okay.
or at least to Supervisor Carson about this subject. So it seems like the council recognizes this is a problem and it's got to be dealt with. I'm concerned that it doesn't drag, because this creates a lot of confusion potentially for people who are looking for services right now. They may not be sure where to go. We don't really know, at least unless things have changed since the last time we met. We don't really know exactly what the county is going to offer. And I am concerned that if the county is going to provide services, whether that means people have to get to Oakland You can get to Oakland in 15 minutes if you've got a car, but if you've got to take public transportation, you may be talking about an hour or more. It's not easy for people who are dealing with mental health issues to be running around looking for services in that way. My own preference would be to figure out some way to get hooked back up with Berkeley, because I think the potential there is greater accessibility. And the last point I would want to make is that I don't see how the county is going to provide meaningful services in Albany until they're supporting a mental health service in Albany. We need something to be here rather than there. So anyway, I'm sorry if that's a little bit disorganized. I'm tired, and that's the best I can do.
Thank you. So is it, Commissioner Kerr, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really. I think the etiology of the letter is beside the point. I think clearly Mayor Pilch and the city staff are looking for support from the community to get some answers from Alameda County Behavioral Health. And I think if we just give a nod to this letter, no matter who signs it, where it's from or how it got written, I think that's what we need to do, and it needs to go out tomorrow.
Yeah. Or is it possible that it has already gone out? I see it's dated September 1. No. Okay.
No, so this letter the draft was provided by Commissioner Kerr, and the recommendation by staff is for the commission to move the letter to on the consent calendar for the city council meeting recommendation on September 8th.
Got it. So essentially, right. So a potential way of addressing that would be a motion that we endorse or ask council to send this or a similar letter, put that on.
Yeah.
But if this is a motion, Bart, how about if we do public comment first? If it's a comment, then is that okay?
I was going to make that into a motion.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. I think we're gonna need to extend.
We need another motion. So this is our last item before future agenda. So items, but Sid is correct. It is 59 minutes after. So do we have a motion to extend?
I'd like to extend for 10 minutes and close the meeting at 11:10.
Second. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Can we just do a raise of hands? All in favor?
Who seconded? Sorry, who seconded?
Margie,
Margie,
just Margie.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. You're right. It was a close call. Everybody was racing the clock. Thank you. So we're extended public comment on this item, which is about a request for the council to authorize a letter to the county asking for the county to rectify this imbalance in mental health services. So members of the public wish to be heard. Please raise your hands. Jeremiah Penguelo, I see your hand up, and the city clerk will move you in. And
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, this is so perfect. Yeah, what a blessing in disguise, really. I second this motion, fully endorse it. I mean, okay, what's going on here is what's been happening for too long. This is what's wrong with the world and everything, right? Someone's been stealing this money. It's been missing, and something's been happening. So it's not about getting this person in trouble, but we need to figure this out, and we need to have good resources. Mental health is number one. You have a 5150, okay? You don't got to send the police, just send the mobile unit with somebody that's specialized in these cases. That's what you got to do when the police get called for a 5150. You don't send the fire department and the ambulance and all that. You send the mobile unit, and then they take care of them. They transport them to John George or wherever they need to go. But this mental health thing, this letter is very well written, and if we can write something similar, so far as politically or unpolitically correct Black Lives Matter movement, this letter is great. So thank you, Nick. Thanks for reaching out for this, because
it feels like you guys do care about, homelessness and shower program and people that are less fortunate, because you guys are writing this letter and this is important. This is on your agenda. So if we could invite the county or invite a member from the Berkeley Food and Housing to appear at this meeting, at least invite them so they can attend the Zoom meeting, and maybe we can ask them questions or something. So yeah, that's great. What a well-written letter. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Seeing no other public comment, we'll come back to Commissioner. I did cut you off, Commissioner Grossman, so you can be recognized if you'd like to.
Yes, so I would like to move that we ask the council to send this letter to the county, both Alameda County Mental Health and to the County Board of Supervisors.
I second that.
Seconded. Discussion?
Just a point of clarification, because I believe the letter directs any further conversation from Alameda County Behavioral Health back to SEJC. It's still not clear to me whether this is part of our work plan or not. So I think we might be getting our wires crossed if we leave the letter addressed the way it is, if we agree or are being told that mental health is not part of our work plan. So we need to iron that out before the letter goes out, and I'm sure that if it's going out under Mayor Pilch's signature, that can be adjusted. The meeting would then have to be with the council, not with the SEJC, if it's not part of our work plan. So I just want to make sure that we get that right.
Yeah.
So I guess, one possibility would be that we send it on as is and let council change it if that's their will, or assume that if council sends on with a request to meet with us, that council is interpreting our work plan to be that, in fact, we could fulfill this. Another is that would revise it. The motion we have is as is. Commissioner Kerr, are you seeking to amend it, or was that just a sort of clarification?
No, I don't need to amend.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so are we ready to vote? Commissioner Gary.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Grossman. I saw you say yes. I think you're muted, but I'll trust my lip reading instincts. Commissioner Marks. Thumbs up, yes, and I vote yes. So we have 5 yes, and that leaves no no's and no abstentions. So that carries. Appreciate that. We'll have a lot going toward council in the next meeting or two with this and the other resolutions that we pass. So I look forward to seeing all of us at the council meetings to make sure we speak for them. Item 7 is future agenda items. So commissioners should announce requests. There's not public comment on this part. Commissioners announce requests for future agenda items. Or any commissioners want to be heard on this? Commissioner Marks. I think you're muted, Margie. You look unmuted.
I want to put the Gill Tract on the agenda for the next meeting. Also, we are going to continue with the communication and outreach, correct? Because we just tabled that.
So 2 pieces, one to continue communication and outreach, and the second to address the public comment on the Gill Tract and the removal of the signage there. Any other items for future agenda from commissioners? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then item 8 on our agenda is an announcement of our next meeting, which is October the 6th. It says in City Hall Chambers, 1000 San Pablo Avenue, or virtual meeting. I'm virtually sure we'll be virtual. The future is hard to predict, but I expect we'll be back on the world of Zoom for all of its limitations. And that concludes. Next item is item 9. So before we conclude, just want to thank Ms. Anderson and Dr. Holt for joining us and for all of their work. Want to thank the staff for all of their work in August, in an unusually busy August, and helping to keep things moving. And want to thank the members of the public for turning out and speaking up. And SEJC is adjourned, and we will look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, October 6th. Thank you.